November 2024, The Tipping Point, A Celestial Storm Unleashes Global Upheaval and New Beginnings, by Ambrosius Holloway. Part 1 November 2024 arrives not quietly, but with the hum of distant thunder, carrying with it astrological winds of change destined to reshape the very foundations of our world. The sky, steeped in ancient rhythms and divine timing, becomes a grand stage where planetary movements mirror the upheavals, tensions, and breakthroughs unfolding across nations and continents. The month opens under the dark cloak of the Scorpio new moon, a celestial phenomenon cloaked in mystery and intensity. Scorpio, the sign of hidden depths and unspoken truths, weaves a dance with Saturn in a steadying trine. This connection is no mere alignment. It symbolizes the unseen yet critical efforts of global powers working tirelessly behind the scenes. Imagine diplomats hunched over treaties in the flickering light of strategy rooms, negotiating financial pacts aimed at long-term fairness and stability. These are not superficial agreements, but deeply consequential maneuvers aimed at fortifying the fragile webs of international commerce. The sextile to Mercury sharpens communication. Words here are more than words. They are weapons, they are shields, they are bridges to the future. As the days progress, November 3rd ushers in Mercury's shift into Sagittarius, a broadening of minds and hearts. Suddenly, the global stage is alive with discussions that echo through the grand halls of history, diplomacy, law, education. Each topic is vast, each conversation imbued with the urgency of now. Cultural landmarks, from the UN headquarters in New York to the Peace Palace in The Hague, buzz with renewed energy, the echoes of past negotiations resounding as new decisions are born. The vision is expansive, but as Mars roars into Leo on November 5th, that vision is sharpened by the raw, fiery ambition of leaders. The world witnesses bold displays of power, rivalries igniting as if the embers of ancient wars had been stoked once again. Then, there is a shift, a cool, pragmatic whisper in the air as Venus steps into Capricorn on November 12th. Gone are the theatrics of Leo's fire. Now, global financial markets and international deals are marked by cold, calculated pragmatism. Venus in Capricorn is the hard-nosed negotiator at the table, reminding the world that love and wealth are built on structure, discipline, and long-term commitment. Her presence is a sobering yet necessary prelude to what comes next. November 15th arrives, and with it, a full moon in Taurus that bathes the Earth in a lunar light that demands reflection. Under this moon, the world's gaze turns toward humanitarian needs, the state of global healthcare, and the very tangible question of how to care for the vulnerable. As Saturn moves direct, the inertia of indecision is broken. Now, action takes precedence. This full moon doesn't just illuminate the Earth's surface. It casts a spotlight on our shared responsibilities, forcing the global community to reckon with its role in shaping the future. The Jupiter-Saturn square pulls at the seams, representing the age-old battle between unchecked growth and the sobering weight of responsibility. It's a tension felt not just in the corridors of power but on the streets, in protests, and in the whispered fears of citizens worldwide. But amidst this strain, Saturn's sextile to Uranus and Jupiter's sextile to Uranus spark a glimmer of hope. These aspects whisper of innovation, of a new dawn in sustainability and technological reform. As if guided by unseen forces, humanity's ingenuity rises to meet the challenges at hand. New technologies, cleaner energies, and visionary reforms begin to take root, signaling the promise of a better, more sustainable future. Mid-month, the cosmos gifts us a rare alignment of trines involving Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and the Sun, a celestial symphony that promotes diplomacy, stability, and humanitarian progress. Diplomatic breakthroughs happen here, under this cosmic light, as leaders from distant lands shake hands and sign papers that could redefine the future of international cooperation. It is a time of harmony, yet the stakes remain high, as the Sun's ingress into Sagittarius on November 22nd heralds a new chapter in international cooperation. Sagittarius, the archer, aims for the horizon, for the higher truths, for the broader picture. Meanwhile, the moon in Leo ignites passions, as emotional investments in political leaders surge. The world watches its rulers closely, scrutinizing their every move, as if sensing that something monumental is on the horizon. And indeed, it is. As November 25th approaches, Mercury's retrograde begins, a signal for the world to pause, reassess, and reconsider. Global communication falters, policies are revisited, and the rush of progress is momentarily slowed to ensure that nothing vital has been overlooked. What seems certain now feels uncertain, as the retrograde stirs questions long left unanswered. But the month does not end quietly. As we step into the final days of November, Uranus and Neptune form powerful aspects, driving profound transformations in financial systems and governance structures. It is here, in this final act, that the future is glimpsed. Pluto's slow march toward Aquarius in 2025 looms larger with every passing day, a harbinger of the radical shifts still to come. As we close this chapter, one can only feel the weight of the question: what awaits us in the months ahead? The astrological winds that have stirred in November set the stage for a new global order, one built on the ashes of the old. The suspense lingers, and the journey is far from over. Keep watching, because what comes next promises to be even more intriguing, more transformative, and more critical to the future of humanity. November 2024, the planetary currents that shape North America's future. The winds of November stir with the whispers of transformation. North America, a region already teetering on the edge of political, economic, and social metamorphosis, is drawn into the gravitational dance of powerful astrological alignments. Scorpio, Pisces, Sagittarius, Leo, and Capricorn step into the spotlight, each demanding their due, each amplifying the continent's need for reinvention. In the shadows of these cosmic shifts, governance, diplomacy, and financial systems stand poised to be forever altered. From the secretive halls of Washington to the resource-rich expanses of Canada and the bustling corridors of Mexico City, the future takes shape, quietly but unmistakably. November 1, 2024, Sun and New Moon in Scorpio trine Saturn in Pisces, sextile Mercury. As the Sun and New Moon emerge in Scorpio, they cast long shadows across North America, whispering of transformation that begins beneath the surface. Scorpio's darkened influence will ignite a fervor for renewal, drawing out long-hidden issues that demand resolution. For governments and institutions, the stakes are high: stabilize or risk the unraveling of the systems that hold together economic and political structures. Saturn in Pisces joins the cosmic chorus, instilling a sobering reminder that the consequences of inaction weigh heavily. In the United States, the Scorpio energy fuels covert negotiations behind closed doors, where economic stability hangs in the balance. Expect international treaties and economic reforms, particularly around trade and resource management, to take center stage. The Federal Reserve and banking systems may undergo a recalibration, though the general public will be left in suspense, unaware of the seismic shifts happening out of view. The Scorpio-Saturn pairing demands patience, a reckoning with the consequences of past financial missteps, and a commitment to building something more resilient. Canada, a nation steeped in natural wealth, finds itself at a crossroads. Under Scorpio's gaze, debates on resource management surge to the forefront. How will this land of oil, minerals, and water pivot toward sustainability? Saturn in Pisces holds Canada accountable to its natural environments, forcing leaders to think long-term. Will the vast water resources and delicate ecosystems be protected, or will short-term gains overshadow the future? Meanwhile, Mexico feels the full weight of Scorpio's intense, often ruthless, drive for reform. Political dynamics begin to shift, especially around governance and financial stability. The air crackles with the energy of negotiation as trade policies are reconsidered, and Mexico's vast natural resources are scrutinized for their role in sustaining both the nation's economy and the global landscape. Here, Scorpio pushes for transparency and a sustainable future, even as whispers of corruption and mismanagement linger in the background. At the crossroads of this transformative energy, the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and its successor, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, will likely be the stage where new trade regulations and economic policies are hashed out. Subtle, unseen negotiations begin, yet their long-term impact will be profound. Financial equity, resource management, and climate initiatives stand as the pillars of these quiet but potent discussions. November 3, 2024. Mercury enters Sagittarius, a new dawn for communication. The arrival of Mercury in Sagittarius brightens the atmosphere, expanding conversations beyond borders. In North America, diplomacy, law, and education open up under Sagittarius' wide-reaching influence. The energy shifts. What was once hidden now comes into the light, optimism taking the reins as global collaborations and educational reforms gain momentum. In the United States, this Sagittarian influence revives diplomatic efforts, thrusting trade and international alliances into the spotlight. Washington finds itself in discussions that extend far beyond the country's borders, reconsidering its role in organizations like the United Nations and NATO. The stakes are high, but so is the risk of overpromising. Sagittarius, ever the idealist, may tempt leaders into commitments that outpace reality. Canada's diplomatic prowess also benefits from Mercury's shift, particularly in areas like international law and environmental protection. Optimism sweeps through discussions of higher education and legal frameworks for trade, with Canadian leaders leaning into Sagittarian ideals of global cooperation. Could this be the beginning of a more collaborative, globally minded Canada? For Mexico, Mercury's transit is a chance to broaden its international reach. Legal reforms and education initiatives gain traction as Mexico seeks to position itself as a critical player in global trade discussions. The energy is ripe for dialogue. Mexico may find itself at the forefront of new international agreements that shape the future of North American relations. Across the continent, the influence of Sagittarius extends into education. Universities and institutions embrace cross-border programs, reflecting the Sagittarian ethos of expanding horizons. North America begins to position itself as a leader in inclusive, global education initiatives that seek to bridge divides and elevate collective understanding. November 5, 2024. Mars in Leo, leadership takes center stage. Mars strides into Leo like a warrior entering the Colosseum, ready to command attention. This fiery transit emboldens leaders to step into the spotlight, to roar with confidence, and to seek creative solutions to entrenched problems. Yet, there's an edge to this energy, a sharpness that invites power struggles and fierce competition. In the political arenas of North America, the air crackles with the promise of bold initiatives, but also the risk of ego-driven conflicts. In the United States, this energy surges just as the 2024 presidential election looms large. Expect political leaders to take assertive, even audacious, actions. From sweeping governance reforms to ambitious infrastructure projects, Mars in Leo lights the path for dynamic, attention-grabbing moves. However, this assertiveness has its double edge. Rivalries among key political figures could intensify, fracturing alliances in a bid for dominance. As the nation's leaders vie for the global stage, projecting strength, internal discord may threaten to overshadow these efforts, turning the election season into a gladiatorial contest of power and vision. For Canada, Mars in Leo stirs a newfound confidence in its diplomatic dealings. No longer content with standing in the shadows, Canadian leaders may seize this moment to shine, especially in areas like climate diplomacy and natural resource management. The world's eyes could turn to Canada as it unveils creative, bold solutions to global environmental challenges, standing firm on the international stage. But, as Mars demands, this ascent won't come without its challenges. Asserting this newfound leadership may invite competition, both domestically and internationally. In Mexico, the political landscape pulses with the energy of bold leadership moves. National leaders may use this moment to solidify their influence, making grand, public gestures that signal their dominance. Yet, as Mars stokes the fires of competition, this could also lead to fierce battles within the political realm, with parties or factions vying for control. Expect an atmosphere of heightened political maneuvering, where strength and visibility become the currency of power. On a broader scale, Mars in Leo might see NAFTA, USMCA countries taking a more aggressive stance in trade negotiations. The air thickens with tension as North America's leaders push assertive trade policies, locking horns with other global economic powers. Competitive posturing may define this period, as these countries strategize to outmaneuver rivals on the global stage. November 12, 2024. Venus in Capricorn, pragmatism and long-term strategy. As Mars stirs the fires of bold leadership, Venus in Capricorn steps in to cool the heat, guiding North America toward a more measured, pragmatic approach. Venus in Capricorn brings discipline and structure, directing financial and diplomatic dealings toward long-term sustainability. Here, ambition is tempered with caution, as leaders focus on building solid foundations that can weather the storms of global uncertainty. In the United States, financial institutions may respond to Venus's steady hand by reinforcing their defenses. Expect policies designed to safeguard the U.S. economy to emerge, with an eye on resilience. This is a time for strategic investments, not the quick gains of Leo's flamboyance, but the deliberate moves that promise stability in the face of a volatile world. Diplomatic negotiations, too, may reflect this approach, with the U.S. prioritizing long-term economic security in its dealings with trade partners. Gone are the days of short-term compromises. Venus in Capricorn demands a more structured, future-focused path. For Canada, Venus's influence may inspire a tightening of regulations, especially in the energy sector. As one of the world's resource giants, Canada will likely make cautious but impactful moves in global markets, positioning itself as a stable, reliable economic partner. Capricorn's disciplined energy ensures that these moves are not flashy but are designed to build a foundation for enduring success. Canada may also use this period to strengthen its financial systems, ensuring that its economic engine runs smoothly for years to come. In Mexico, Venus in Capricorn turns the nation's focus to solidifying trade relationships, particularly with its North American neighbors. The energy is one of deliberate consolidation. Leaders may work to stabilize sectors like manufacturing and agriculture, ensuring their long-term viability in an increasingly competitive global landscape. This period is less about dramatic overhauls and more about careful, calculated steps that ensure Mexico's economic sustainability. On the global stage, North American institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, might take on new prominence. Under Venus in Capricorn's influence, these institutions could champion the cause of long-term financial stability, advocating for sustainable investments that build economic resilience. As the world grapples with uncertainty, North America's measured approach could serve as a blueprint for other regions seeking to weather global economic challenges. November 15, 2024. A cosmic convergence, Saturn direct and full moon in Taurus set the stage for transformation across North America. Saturn direct in Pisces, reawakening compassion through structure. After months of retrograde introspection, Saturn stations direct in Pisces, breathing new life into the realm of healthcare, social services, and humanitarian reform. This is not just a nudge, it's a call to solidify the systems that serve the most vulnerable. Pisces' boundless compassion combines with Saturn's disciplined resolve, focusing attention on institutions that have struggled to keep pace with overwhelming societal needs. In the United States, the gears of healthcare reform may grind back into motion. Conversations once abandoned or deferred now resurface with a sense of urgency. Universal health care, mental health reform, and opioid addiction, issues that have simmered during Saturn's retrograde, could now take center stage. Expect renewed vigor from public health organizations like the CDC and NIH, whose long-term strategies for pandemic preparedness and mental health support will likely shape national discourse. This is not just policy on paper, it's a lifeline for millions navigating an overstretched system. For Canada, Saturn's forward motion could herald reforms focused on closing healthcare gaps, especially in rural and Indigenous communities. The scars of the COVID-19 pandemic have yet to fully heal, and now is the time for the country to reassess how to deliver equitable care to its most underserved populations. Saturn's influence compels Canadian leaders to strategize for a healthcare system that doesn't merely survive but evolves to serve future generations. In Mexico, the focus turns to healthcare accessibility and infrastructure. Saturn's direct motion acts like a magnifying glass over systemic issues, urging Mexico's leadership to confront the inequalities that plague its public health services. There is potential for new alliances with global health organizations like the WHO, which could accelerate much-needed reforms. The challenge, however, lies in whether Mexico's leaders can navigate the internal politics that often stall such progress. Full moon in Taurus, a spotlight on economic stability and resource strain. While Saturn reawakens the heart of humanitarian efforts, the full moon in Taurus casts its gaze upon the material world, resources, financial stability, and the earth beneath our feet. Taurus, the zodiac's master of patience and practicality, insists that North America take a long, hard look at its relationship with the planet's bounty. Under this full moon, what is stable may be shaken, and what is hidden may come to light. In the United States, the financial markets may find themselves under intense scrutiny. Interest rates, inflation, and economic stability, topics already fraught with tension, could dominate headlines. The Federal Reserve might make pivotal announcements aimed at safeguarding the economy from volatility. But beyond Wall Street, the full moon's influence will also extend to the fields and farms, with climate change's impact on agriculture sparking new debates on food security and sustainability. As Taurus demands, the question will be how to manage these finite resources in a world that continues to strain their limits. Canada's resource-dependent economy may feel the full moon's pull even more acutely. Industries like oil, timber, and mining could find themselves in the spotlight, with growing concerns over environmental impact clashing with economic needs. The moon, full and heavy, presses the question: can Canada continue to rely on its natural wealth without sacrificing the very land it treasures? Discussions around carbon emissions, resource taxation, and environmental stewardship may intensify as leaders are forced to balance the prosperity of today with the sustainability of tomorrow. For Mexico, the full moon's focus on resources brings forward long-standing tensions surrounding land and wealth distribution. Agriculture and natural resources remain the backbone of the nation's economy, but this lunar energy may expose inequalities in how these assets are managed. Expect renewed debates on land reforms, particularly in rural and indigenous communities, where the push for fairer resource allocation grows stronger. Here, grassroots movements may rise, demanding that the nation's wealth be shared more equitably. The USMCA, the economic backbone linking the United States, Canada, and Mexico, could come under increased scrutiny as these financial and resource-based pressures mount. Economic agreements may be reassessed, with member nations questioning whether current trade policies adequately protect their interests amid fluctuating markets. This reevaluation could spark competitive negotiations as each nation seeks to solidify its footing in an uncertain global economy. Jupiter-Saturn square. Growth meets caution. This square on November 15, 2024, represents a clash of desires. Jupiter in Gemini, with its relentless drive for expansion, pushes the boundaries of education, media, and intellectual pursuits. Yet, Saturn in Pisces exerts pressure from the other side, urging responsibility and restraint. The result is a delicate balancing act that will ripple across North America, forcing leaders to make tough choices about how far to stretch their ambitions without overburdening their systems. In the United States, the debate heats up around education reform and media regulation. On one side, Jupiter's influence inspires grand visions, perhaps a nationwide push to expand digital learning platforms or overhaul higher education systems to better serve an increasingly digital age. Yet, Saturn's weight reminds the country's leaders that resources are not infinite. Political debates may spiral around whether to prioritize this expansion or focus on pressing economic concerns. Media reforms could also emerge as a battleground, with regulators grappling over how to balance free expression with accountability in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. For Canada, the tension takes on a familiar tone. Discussions about how to expand access to education and media innovation will dominate the political arena, but looming budget constraints will challenge the government to act carefully. How can Canada grow its knowledge economy while ensuring the quality of education remains high? As these questions swirl, Saturn's sobering influence will likely inspire calls for caution, urging Canadian leaders to think long-term about the nation's intellectual and financial resources. In Mexico, the stakes are perhaps even higher. Here, the square may manifest as a tug-of-war between the country's need for educational reform and the immediate humanitarian crises that demand attention. Political leaders will have to strategize carefully, deciding how to balance the desire for long-term investments in technological infrastructure with the urgent need to provide social services. The tension will be palpable as Mexico's leaders weigh aspirations for growth against the pressing needs of their citizens. Mid-November 2024, Saturn-Uranus sextile and Jupiter-Uranus sextile, innovation meets discipline. As mid-November approaches, a more harmonious energy takes hold with the Saturn-Uranus sextile and the Jupiter-Uranus sextile. These aspects create a fertile environment for innovation, particularly in agriculture and energy sectors, where breakthroughs can emerge from disciplined strategy and creative risk-taking. North America stands on the brink of profound change, where technology and sustainability begin to intertwine in ways that promise a more resilient future. For the United States, this sextile marks a turning point in its approach to energy and agriculture. Renewable energy technologies, long simmering in the background, may finally gain the political and financial support needed to push them into the mainstream. Government incentives for sustainable farming practices could transform the agricultural sector, encouraging the development of crops that are more resilient to the shifting climate. Discussions around financial reform might also take shape, with leaders strategizing ways to safeguard the economy while fostering innovation. The pressure of environmental and economic instability could drive the U.S. toward more responsible, forward-thinking policies. In Canada, the agricultural and energy sectors stand to benefit greatly from Uranus's influence. Expect a surge of interest in renewable energy technologies, from hydropower to solar innovations, as Canada looks to strengthen its position as a leader in sustainable development. Saturn's steady hand will ensure these advancements are not fleeting but are grounded in long-term strategies that integrate environmental care with economic growth. Legislative reforms may emerge, particularly those that modernize energy production and seek to balance natural resource management with the demands of an increasingly eco-conscious public. Mexico, too, will feel the winds of change, particularly in its efforts to reform agricultural practices and reduce its dependence on fossil fuels. Uranus's touch could spark breakthroughs in renewable energy projects, with solar and wind power leading the charge. Mexico may also experience advancements in water management technology, a crucial development for the country's agricultural sector, which often faces the brunt of water shortages. This period presents a golden opportunity for Mexico to position itself as a regional leader in sustainability and innovation, with the potential to reshape its economic trajectory. Jupiter-Uranus sextile, a revolution in technology and finance. The Jupiter-Uranus sextile sparks an atmosphere of creativity and bold ideas, opening the door for groundbreaking progress in technology and finance. This alignment, brimming with optimism, encourages North American nations to rethink their approach to science, healthcare, and climate change. Under this influence, the future looks brighter, more sustainable, and deeply interconnected. In the United States, innovation flourishes. Expect a surge of activity in the tech sector, particularly in healthcare and environmental solutions. Silicon Valley, always at the forefront of technological advancements, could see a flood of investment in projects aimed at tackling climate change or revolutionizing digital media. New healthcare technologies, possibly centered around AI-driven medical solutions, may emerge as bold initiatives seek to improve quality of life across the nation. Financial policies might also undergo restructuring to support long-term, sustainable growth, reflecting the nation's desire to align economic practices with future-focused ideals. Meanwhile, Canada stands on the cusp of significant breakthroughs in healthcare and climate technology. The sextile energizes efforts to reduce carbon emissions, with new innovations poised to modernize infrastructure and promote green technology. Financial reforms aimed at fostering sustainable economic practices could reshape key sectors, from healthcare to renewable energy, as Canada embraces its role as a global leader in environmental stewardship. Mexico will not be left behind. This period heralds a rapid acceleration in digital and climate technologies. Mexico may develop new systems for managing resources more sustainably, with cutting-edge innovations in energy and agriculture leading the charge. The Jupiter-Uranus sextile offers Mexico an opportunity to take the helm in regional sustainability initiatives, positioning itself as a key player in the global shift toward more eco-friendly practices. November 17–18, 2024, Mercury trine Jupiter, diplomacy, education, and cultural exchange. As the Mercury-Jupiter trine takes center stage, North America basks in the glow of intellectual growth, optimism, and diplomatic progress. Mercury, now in expansive Sagittarius, forms a harmonious connection with Jupiter in communicative Gemini, amplifying efforts in diplomacy, education, and media. It is a time for cooperation, where borders blur, and cross-cultural exchanges flourish. In the United States, this aspect fuels diplomatic efforts on the world stage. International trade negotiations gain momentum, with the U.S. adopting a more cooperative stance with global allies. The United Nations and World Trade Organization may see renewed collaboration, as the U.S. takes a prominent role in crafting policies that promote global cooperation. At home, education reforms could dominate discussions, particularly around expanding digital learning platforms and ensuring equitable access. This trine pushes the country to think broadly, with a focus on educational innovation that bridges divides and empowers future generations. For Canada, the Mercury-Jupiter trine shines a light on education, immigration, and media reforms. Policymakers may focus on cross-cultural exchanges, striving for greater diversity in both education and media. Canada's diplomatic relationships, especially with neighboring countries, could deepen, with trade agreements and environmental policies taking precedence. The country's role in global diplomacy is likely to grow during this period, as it champions diversity and inclusion on the world stage. Mexico will benefit from increased diplomatic engagement, both within North America and beyond. The trine encourages stronger ties with the U.S. and Canada through the USMCA, fostering discussions around fair trade practices and mutual growth. Mexico's role in these talks could lead to economic strategies that further integrate its policies with its northern neighbors, paving the way for greater regional cooperation. Additionally, cross-cultural exchanges may flourish, with educational and media initiatives promoting collaboration across borders. Universities and media organizations across North America may seize this moment to launch new projects that focus on global cooperation. Cross-border education programs, supported by digital platforms, could blossom, bringing together students and educators from across the continent in the name of inclusion and intellectual advancement. Saturn trine Venus, building enduring financial and diplomatic foundations. The Saturn-Venus trine signals a period of calm strength in the financial and diplomatic spheres. Saturn's disciplined energy, grounded in compassionate Pisces, merges with Venus in pragmatic Capricorn, creating a fertile ground for long-term economic policies and diplomatic strategies that emphasize stability and growth. This is a time for thoughtful, measured decisions, where ambition is tempered with realism and strategic foresight. In the United States, this aspect offers a unique opportunity to fortify economic policies amid global uncertainties. The government may concentrate on stabilizing financial systems through careful planning, ensuring the nation's resilience against economic shocks. Relationships with global financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank could deepen, with a focus on sustainable development and infrastructure projects that promise long-term returns. Diplomatically, the U.S. may strengthen its alliances, using trade agreements and economic collaboration to build enduring partnerships that transcend short-term gains, securing its influence on the global stage. For Canada, this trine encourages steady growth and financial consolidation. Canada's leaders will likely take a cautious but strategic approach, prioritizing sustainability, particularly in sectors like resource management and climate action. Diplomatic influence within global forums like the G7 could expand as Canada emerges as a leader in promoting environmentally conscious policies. This moment allows Canada to build solid financial partnerships that reinforce its commitment to sustainable development and global cooperation. Mexico stands to gain from this stabilizing energy, using the Saturn-Venus trine to solidify its financial and trade policies. Leaders may focus on resource management reforms and strengthening trade agreements within the USMCA framework, particularly with the US and Canada. This period offers Mexico a chance to secure its place in global supply chains, particularly in agriculture and manufacturing, fostering long-term economic stability. Diplomatically, Mexico could leverage its prudent financial policies to build stronger, more cooperative relationships with neighboring countries. Across North America, the USMCA agreement may benefit from this aspect as member nations focus on solidifying trade regulations and fostering long-term growth. Discussions about refining trade rules could lead to policies that ensure economic stability for the region, laying the foundation for sustained prosperity. Neptune trine the Sun, compassionate leadership and humanitarian initiatives. As the Neptune-Sun trine graces the skies, a wave of idealism and spiritual awareness flows through North America. Neptune in Pisces, embodying compassion and empathy, forms a harmonious connection with the transformative energy of the Sun in Scorpio. This aspect ushers in a period where leadership is driven by a deeper sense of collective well-being, inspiring governments and organizations to prioritize humanitarian efforts and social reforms. In the United States, the focus may shift toward addressing societal inequalities and expanding social welfare programs. Healthcare reform, climate action, and poverty alleviation could take center stage, with leaders pushing for policies that reflect empathy and support for underserved communities. Non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and humanitarian organizations are likely to play a pivotal role, working alongside the government to tackle global issues like climate change, poverty, and refugee crises. This trine encourages spiritual leadership, with public figures advocating for policies that prioritize compassion and a shared sense of responsibility for the planet. For Canada, the Neptune-Sun trine amplifies its role as a global humanitarian leader. Expect increased attention on human rights, peace initiatives, and environmental sustainability. Canadian leaders may push for stronger international collaboration on global health and refugee support, aligning their policies with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Canada's diplomatic efforts during this time could reinforce its position as a champion of peace and compassion, both within its borders and abroad. In Mexico, this compassionate energy could inspire government leaders to embrace social reforms aimed at improving the lives of their citizens. Expanding healthcare access, improving education, and addressing poverty in rural and indigenous communities may become top priorities. Mexico's leadership could also take a more active role in global humanitarian efforts, offering support to crisis-stricken regions through partnerships with organizations like the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. This period of spiritual and humanitarian leadership reinforces Mexico's role as a regional force for good. The Neptune-Sun trine fosters an environment where organizations focused on charity, public health, and spiritual leadership thrive. Global NGOs, religious leaders, and humanitarian organizations across North America may collaborate on issues such as poverty, climate change, and the refugee crisis, creating a climate of compassion and cooperation that echoes throughout the continent. This is a moment where North America leads not just with policies, but with heart, offering the world a vision of compassionate governance rooted in collective well-being. November 22, 2024, Sagittarius Sun and Leo Moon, diplomacy, leadership, and national pride. As the Sun strides into Sagittarius on November 22, 2024, the winds of expansion and diplomacy stir across North America. Sagittarius, with its boundless optimism and quest for growth, opens the door to new horizons in law, education, and global trade. This transit pushes nations to look outward, fostering international cooperation, broadening legal reforms, and championing intellectual exchange. At the same time, the Moon in Leo rises, demanding charismatic leadership and emotional connection between governments and their people. It's a moment of dynamic contrast, where the thirst for progress meets the heartfelt demand for strong, authentic leadership. Sun in Sagittarius, diplomatic expansion and legal reforms. Sagittarius, ever the explorer, infuses the atmosphere with a desire for diplomatic outreach and reform. This solar transit brings a fresh wave of energy, urging North American nations to broaden their perspectives and take bolder steps on the world stage. It's a time to refine legal structures, advocate for fair trade, and foster global education initiatives. In the United States, this Sagittarian energy may spark renewed diplomatic efforts, particularly in international law and trade negotiations. Expect discussions within the United Nations and other global institutions to take on a new urgency, with a focus on reforming climate policies, advancing human rights, and crafting more equitable trade agreements. The U.S. could find itself at the forefront of global diplomacy, with leaders embracing a more inclusive, adventurous approach to foreign policy. Educational reforms, too, may come under the spotlight, with a push to increase access to learning and deepen international academic partnerships. It's a moment for the U.S. to not just lead but to listen, engage, and adapt in the ever-evolving global landscape. For Canada, the Sun in Sagittarius amplifies its diplomatic voice on the world stage. As a nation known for peacekeeping and environmental advocacy, Canada may seize this opportunity to push for legal reforms in international law and champion climate justice. This period could see Canada taking a leadership role in global governance, advocating for fair trade practices and spearheading educational initiatives that foster inclusivity. Whether through global scholarship programs or partnerships with developing nations, Canada's focus on collaboration will reflect its Sagittarian-inspired commitment to global progress. Mexico, too, will feel the pull of this Sagittarian influence, particularly in its trade and legal relations. Strengthening ties with North American neighbors and forging new global partnerships will be a priority. Discussions around fair trade agreements, educational reforms, and immigration may gain momentum as Mexico seeks to balance economic expansion with legal fairness and humanitarian considerations. It's a time for Mexico to solidify its role in the global marketplace while remaining committed to social justice and reform. At the heart of this transit, the USMCA agreement could undergo renewed scrutiny. Discussions around fair trade practices, intellectual property rights, and digital commerce will likely surface, with an emphasis on legal clarity and fairness. Environmental protections, particularly those related to trade and sustainability, may also take center stage as North American nations push for a more just and equitable global economy. Moon in Leo, emotional engagement and charismatic leadership. Simultaneously, the Moon in Leo casts a bright, passionate glow over national affairs. This lunar energy stirs the emotions of the public, amplifying feelings of pride, identity, and the desire for strong, confident leadership. Governments will find themselves under heightened scrutiny as citizens demand clear direction and bold action. It's a time when leadership is not only expected but required to inspire and unite. In the United States, the Moon in Leo coincides with a period of heightened emotional investment in political leadership, especially as the country grapples with the aftermath of the 2024 presidential election. The public will be closely watching their leaders, expecting speeches that reassure, inspire, and project strength. Nationalistic events could spark debates about the future direction of the nation, with citizens looking for a vision that unites them. As emotions run high, leaders will need to navigate the fine line between inspiring patriotism and addressing the practical challenges facing the country. For Canada, the moon in Leo may lead to increased public scrutiny of leadership, particularly in how the government handles pressing issues like healthcare, climate change, and Indigenous rights. The nation's leaders will be called upon to project confidence and take decisive action, with citizens expecting a bold stance on both domestic and global matters. National pride will swell during this period, with discussions about Canada's identity and its place on the world stage taking on new emotional resonance. Mexico will also experience a surge in public emotion as the moon in Leo shines a spotlight on its leadership. Citizens will be looking for strength and vision from their leaders, especially in addressing issues such as economic inequality, crime, and corruption. Public rallies or nationalistic events may unfold, with leaders expected to rise to the occasion, delivering messages that inspire hope and unity. The Leo energy of the moon further underscores the importance of charismatic, accountable leadership across North America. It's not enough to lead with strength. Leaders must connect emotionally with their citizens, showing not just power but integrity and compassion. Those who can walk this line successfully will find their influence growing, while those who falter may face growing discontent. Taurus midheaven, financial stability and sustainable resource management. The Taurus midheaven marks a pivotal moment where national priorities shift toward grounded economic policies and sustainable resource management. As the emotional energy of the Leo moon stirs national pride, Taurus steps in to remind leaders of the need for pragmatism and long-term thinking. This alignment encourages North American governments to balance the allure of rapid expansion with the reality of finite resources. In the United States, this energy will likely guide economic discussions, particularly around sectors like agriculture, energy, and manufacturing. The steady influence of Taurus encourages the U.S. government to take a practical approach, focusing on how to manage natural resources sustainably while promoting growth. Financial markets may stabilize as long-term investments in infrastructure and energy resilience become a priority, especially in response to global climate challenges. It's a moment where the U.S. must reconcile its need for economic expansion with its responsibility to future generations. Canada will find itself at a crossroads in managing its vast natural resources. Timber, oil, and minerals have long been pillars of the Canadian economy, but the Taurus midheaven emphasizes the need for sustainable practices that align with environmental goals. Policies aimed at reducing carbon emissions, protecting wildlife, and responsibly managing natural resources may be introduced or expanded during this period. Canada's leaders will likely use this time to build a resilient economy that reflects the country's commitment to environmental stewardship. For Mexico, the focus will be on balancing economic growth with sustainable practices, particularly in agriculture, energy, and resource extraction. The government may prioritize rural development and fair resource distribution, especially in regions affected by environmental degradation. The influence of Taurus encourages long-term strategies that promote both financial stability and environmental health, with Mexico poised to play a key role in global discussions around sustainable resource management. In this period, North American institutions like the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, IMF, may play a crucial role in supporting sustainable development across the continent. Financial assistance and collaboration aimed at promoting green energy and sustainable practices could gain momentum, as nations work to balance economic growth with the urgent need for environmental responsibility. November 22, 2024, Saturn-Mercury trine and Mercury retrograde, structured communication and diplomatic precision. As the Saturn-Mercury trine forms on November 22, a wave of disciplined and thoughtful communication sweeps through North America. This aspect favors long-term planning, making it an ideal time for governments and organizations to address complex issues with clarity and focus. The structured energy of Saturn in Pisces, combined with Mercury's intellectual sharpness, sets the stage for detailed negotiations and the crafting of policies designed to promote stability and cooperation. In the United States, the Saturn-Mercury trine may enhance discussions around key areas such as infrastructure development, trade negotiations, and legal reforms. This energy pushes policymakers to tackle systemic issues with a methodical approach, particularly in healthcare, education, and social services. Diplomatic forums like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization could see significant progress, as U.S. leaders use this structured communication to make headway in international negotiations. Discussions around trade agreements, environmental policies, and digital governance are likely to move forward during this period, reflecting the nation's broader commitment to long-term stability. Canada will also benefit from this alignment, particularly in its diplomatic and environmental policies. The Saturn-Mercury trine supports Canada's disciplined approach to foreign policy, allowing the country to strengthen its position in international negotiations, especially on climate change and trade. Environmental justice and economic growth may go hand in hand as Canada seeks to balance its global leadership on environmental issues with the practicalities of trade agreements and foreign diplomacy. Canada's role in shaping international law may also expand, as leaders work methodically to promote policies that reflect their long-term vision for sustainability. For Mexico, this trine will bring structure and clarity to its diplomatic and trade negotiations, particularly within the framework of the USMCA. Bilateral discussions with the US and Canada may progress, with a focus on refining policies related to agriculture, resource management, and labor rights. Mexico's leaders will be called upon to navigate global economic pressures, using the disciplined energy of Saturn and Mercury to stabilize the economy and ensure that trade agreements align with national priorities. The emphasis will be on long-term economic stability and cooperation, reflecting Mexico's strategic role in North American trade. This period is ideal for creating policies that promote long-term cooperation and stability, with global organizations like the IMF and the World Health Organization, WHO, playing pivotal roles. North American nations may be actively involved in crafting international agreements that emphasize sustainability, healthcare reform, and economic resilience, using the structured energy of the Saturn-Mercury trine to bring clarity and precision to their negotiations. As November progresses, the celestial currents shift dramatically, plunging North America into a period of intense reflection and disruptive innovation. Mercury retrograde on November 25 brings a familiar sense of reevaluation, where communication, trade, and travel come under scrutiny. Delays, miscommunications, and logistical challenges might surface, but beneath this apparent disruption lies an opportunity to reassess old agreements, fine-tune policies, and solidify long-term strategies. As the month draws to a close, the Uranus-Pluto trine promises groundbreaking changes in finance, agriculture, and energy, urging nations to adopt bold, innovative solutions for a more resilient future. Mercury retrograde, a time for reassessment in communication, trade, and travel. Mercury's retrograde is known for unsettling the realms of communication and travel, yet this period offers a hidden gift, an opportunity for reevaluation and fine-tuning. As the planet retraces its steps, North America will be urged to revisit previously laid plans and agreements, especially in areas crucial to global trade and transportation. In the United States, international trade agreements may hit a roadblock, with communication policies facing unexpected delays. Negotiations that seemed locked in may now require a second look, pushing leaders to reassess the sustainability of these arrangements. Travel policies could also see disruptions, especially in international flights and regulations, creating logistical headaches. This retrograde offers a moment to pause, reflect, and fine-tune policies, ensuring that past decisions, particularly those related to trade and education, are robust and future-proof. For Canada, the retrograde energy may cause disruptions in its vital trade routes, particularly with the US and Mexico. Supply chain delays or changes in travel regulations may force policymakers to reconsider existing trade agreements. Immigration reform could also come into focus, as Canada looks to strengthen its cross-border relations. Educational policies, especially digital learning and international cooperation, may also be scrutinized, as leaders look to improve access and resilience in a shifting global landscape. Mexico will not be immune to Mercury's retrograde pull, as its trade and transportation sectors may face delays. Cross-border agreements with North American partners could experience disruptions, forcing Mexico to reassess key policies, particularly those related to agricultural exports. This retrograde is a time for Mexico to reflect deeply on its long-term economic strategies, ensuring that its trade relations and travel systems are adaptable to future challenges. This period will also see NAFTA, USMCA undergoing delays or revisions in trade discussions. Nations may be compelled to rethink and refine their policies to ensure they align with long-term objectives, creating a more resilient framework for future collaboration. Uranus-Pluto trine, financial transformation and disruptive innovation. As the month closes, a seismic shift occurs with the Uranus-Pluto trine, a potent alignment that drives deep financial and structural change across the globe. For North America, this trine represents the push toward innovative solutions in response to mounting economic and environmental challenges. The focus is on reimagining the finance, agriculture, and energy sectors to ensure long-term sustainability. In the United States, the trine could bring about significant shifts within its financial systems. Uranus retrograde in Taurus, a sign tied to stability and resources, will challenge the status quo, forcing institutions like the Federal Reserve to rethink policies around interest rates, inflation, and agricultural subsidies. Disruptive innovation will ripple through industries, particularly renewable energy and agritech, as breakthroughs reshape the nation's economic planning. This is a time when traditional financial models may no longer suffice. Only bold, forward-thinking strategies will meet the demands of a rapidly changing world. For Canada, the effects of this trine will be felt in its resource-driven economy. As global disruptions unfold, Uranus pushes Canada to embrace new technologies in agriculture and energy. Sustainable farming practices and renewable energy initiatives may gain traction as leaders prioritize resilience and long-term stability. Financial markets may also be restructured, focusing on investments that balance environmental responsibility with economic growth, ensuring that Canada remains competitive in the face of global volatility. Mexico will also experience the transformative power of Uranus and Pluto. As the Mexican economy relies heavily on resource-based industries, innovations in agriculture and energy will be crucial. Uranus's disruptive influence will encourage Mexico to adopt green technologies and renewable energy solutions, shaking up traditional methods and practices. The financial sector may undergo its own transformation, with policies designed to foster long-term economic growth and resilience, positioning Mexico as a leader in sustainable development. This Uranus-Pluto trine compels North America to rethink its approach to economic stability, particularly in the finance and agricultural sectors. Structural changes are not only necessary, they are inevitable. Nations that embrace this disruptive innovation will find themselves better equipped to face future challenges, crafting economies that are more adaptable, resilient, and sustainable. Neptune-Pluto sextile, humanitarian reforms and institutional integrity. The Neptune-Pluto sextile whispers of transformation on a grand scale, urging North American nations to realign their institutions with humanitarian ideals and spiritual leadership. This alignment calls for charitable initiatives and reform, demanding that institutions serve the collective good with compassion and integrity. In the United States, this aspect will likely spark a surge of efforts aimed at addressing systemic inequities. Healthcare reform, social justice movements, and the restructuring of public institutions will take center stage. Institutions such as the World Health Organization, WHO, and leading NGOs may collaborate closely with the U.S. government to dismantle long-standing barriers in healthcare, education, and housing. Neptune's influence brings clarity to institutional weaknesses, compelling leaders to pursue compassionate reforms that seek to heal the nation's deeper wounds. For Canada, the sextile enhances its role in global humanitarian efforts. Reforms in public health, social services, and environmental protection are likely to take shape as Canada's leadership expands its influence in global governance. Issues like climate change, poverty, and refugee crises could become the focus of Canada's diplomatic efforts, as the country pushes for international cooperation. Within its borders, Canada's institutions may undergo transformations to become more inclusive and responsive to social challenges, with reforms aimed at strengthening the social safety net for all. In Mexico, this alignment may herald a period of deep institutional reform, especially in the areas of social services and healthcare. The Neptune-Pluto sextile encourages transparency and demands that the government address long-standing issues of inequality and corruption. This influence could accelerate reforms in public health and education, laying the groundwork for long-term stability and ensuring that these institutions better serve the broader population. Mexico's leaders will be called upon to embrace humanitarian policies that elevate the nation's most vulnerable citizens, transforming the country's institutional landscape for generations to come. This aspect may also inspire global organizations such as the United Nations to intensify their focus on humanitarian reforms. Issues of social justice, poverty reduction, and climate change will likely become central to international discourse, as leaders from across the globe unite in their shared responsibility for collective progress. Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn, the end of an era and the restructuring of power. As Pluto moves through the final degrees of Capricorn, the tectonic plates of power shift one last time, completing the long and arduous process of restructuring that has defined Pluto's journey through this sign. For North America, this is the closing chapter of a period marked by profound changes in governance, financial systems, and institutional integrity. The ground beneath these structures trembles as Pluto prepares to enter Aquarius, where collective empowerment and innovation will take the lead. In the United States, the end of Pluto's reign in Capricorn signals the culmination of years of economic and political reform. Power structures within the government, financial sectors, and corporate entities will undergo final adjustments, setting the stage for a new era. This period will likely see the dismantling of outdated hierarchical systems, paving the way for collective innovation and social progress as Pluto transitions into Aquarius in 2025. The U.S. stands poised on the edge of this transformation, ready to embrace a future where shared power and technological advancement define the national ethos. For Canada, Pluto's final passage through Capricorn brings the conclusion of reforms aimed at making governance more equitable and responsive to public needs. Canada's political and financial institutions, long under scrutiny, will emerge from this period stronger and more transparent. As the country completes its restructuring efforts, it prepares to adopt a more community-driven approach to governance, where progressive policies and collective well-being take precedence. Canada's institutions will be ready to meet the challenges of a world where innovation and inclusivity are paramount. In Mexico, Pluto's last degrees in Capricorn will root out the final vestiges of corruption and inefficiency within the political and financial systems. This period of deep transformation will prepare Mexico to step into a new era, where transparency and fairness define its governance. As Pluto exits Capricorn, Mexico will be ready to embrace social progress and technological innovation, positioning itself as a leader in regional reform. The groundwork laid during this time will allow Mexico to face the future with renewed strength and purpose, as it emerges from the shadows of its past. As Pluto prepares to enter Aquarius, North America stands on the brink of a new global order. The old hierarchies of power will give way to systems that prioritize innovation, social progress, and collective empowerment, signaling the dawn of a transformative era. Conclusion: a new vision for North America. From November 22 to 30, 2024, North America will undergo profound shifts, driven by the Neptune-Pluto sextile and Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn. These powerful aspects will reshape the region's political, economic, and social landscape, with a focus on humanitarian reforms, institutional integrity, and the culmination of long-term restructuring efforts. As institutions evolve to meet the needs of the collective, North America will find itself at the threshold of a new era, one defined by innovation, social justice, and collective progress. As the stars continue their cosmic journey, the changes set in motion during this period will reverberate for years to come. North America's path forward will be shaped by the decisions made now, as governments and institutions prepare for the next chapter of collective empowerment and visionary progress. Keep watching, for the future promises to be even more compelling, transformative, and deeply connected to the global rhythm of change. November celestial shift, Central America's crucial transformation. In mundane astrology, planetary movements reflect more than cosmic dances. They mirror the very heartbeat of nations. For Central America, particularly El Salvador, Belize, and Panama, the astrological currents of November 2024 are poised to stir profound change. As planets chart their courses, so too will the tides of political, economic, and social landscapes shift. With the Sun and Moon in Scorpio aligning with Saturn and Mercury, these regions brace for transformative energies that will reshape governance, resource management, and their very response to nature's fury. November 1, 2024, the Scorpio Sun and New Moon ignite transformation. A dark November sky, thick with the intensity of Scorpio, welcomes a new moon, both celestial bodies entwined with Saturn's disciplined influence in Pisces. The trine to Saturn whispers of stability and endurance, but it is Scorpio's raw power that brings buried issues into the light. In El Salvador, the demand for political accountability takes center stage as citizens grow weary of hidden corruption and inefficient governance. With each passing day, the call for transparency swells, and whispers in the corridors of power suggest reform is imminent. Panama, with its strategic economic powerhouses, will feel this scorpionic pull as well, particularly in how it manages resources, its lifeblood being the Panama Canal. Yet, with global economic turbulence shaking foundations worldwide, leaders are not only concerned with economic survival but with institutional longevity. Financial structures are due for reinforcement, with international players like the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, CABEI, quietly strategizing, working behind the scenes to prop up faltering economies. Scorpio's influence dives deeper still. Environmental concerns, long simmering beneath the surface, surge as treaties concerning water management and climate resilience come to the fore. The fear of hurricanes, ever present in these coastal nations, drives swift action. November begins not with public fanfare, but with subtle, quiet agreements behind closed doors, where the fate of nations is forged far from the public eye. November 3, 2024, Mercury in Sagittarius, opening diplomatic gates. With the Sun barely settled into Scorpio's intensity, Mercury swiftly enters Sagittarius, bringing with it a gust of fresh, expansive air. Conversations shift, diplomacy takes precedence. In Belize, positioned like a gatekeeper between the Caribbean and Central America, this energy brings negotiations to the forefront. The long-standing territorial dispute with Guatemala might once again capture the spotlight, as diplomatic overtures for peace seem tantalizingly within reach. Leaders speak of optimism, of bridges built, and treaties signed, but there's a caution here too. Sagittarius, with its lofty ideals, can promise more than it delivers. El Salvador turns its attention inward under this planetary shift. Educational reform becomes the rallying cry of social movements and policymakers alike. The Sagittarian thirst for knowledge propels debates about modernizing the country's academic standards, aligning them with global expectations. Hope swells within the nation's youth, who see education as their escape from systemic poverty, yet for all its potential, this shift comes with the danger of overreach. Will ambition outstrip practicality? And in Panama, the gateway to the world, Mercury in Sagittarius casts its influence over trade discussions. Conversations regarding the Panama Canal's future dominate the national discourse, as leaders negotiate its place in global commerce. Yet the diplomatic horizon is not without its clouds. Idealism threatens to blind leadership to the hard realities of international relations. Overpromising could lead to diplomatic fumbles that resonate far beyond Central American shores. November 5, 2024. Mars in Leo, the rise of power and charisma. When Mars enters Leo, it doesn't tiptoe, it roars. The fierce energy of Leo imbues leaders with courage and a hunger for dominance. In Central America, where the stakes are high, this celestial energy will spark emboldened leadership, particularly in El Salvador. Under the charismatic and controversial presidency of Nayib Bukele, Mars in Leo could ignite sweeping policy changes, showcasing a firm grip on power. Expect declarations that are as grandiose as they are controversial, especially in areas where Bukele seeks to demonstrate strength. Human rights critics may raise their voices, but the administration, charged with Mars audacity, may march forward undeterred, solidifying its place on the global stage. Panama, too, will feel the heat of Mars' fiery influence. As the lifeblood of global trade flows through the Panama Canal, Mars in Leo brings a surge of energy into the nation's economic ambitions. Modernization efforts could see Panama reimagining its infrastructure, perhaps renegotiating trade agreements to assert its importance in global commerce. Yet Mars thrives on competition, and within Panama's leadership, there may be internal power struggles, battles for influence as leaders jockey for position both at home and abroad. Boldness will be key, but it may come at the cost of diplomatic finesse. November 12, 2024. Venus in Capricorn, grounding in pragmatism and sustainability. As Mars in Leo propels leaders to strut on the world stage, Venus, ever the diplomat, slips into Capricorn, urging a more measured, cautious approach to matters of finance and relationships. For Panama and El Salvador, this transition signals a shift from dramatic displays of power to the careful crafting of long-term economic strategies. Venus in Capricorn favors the steady hand, urging countries to solidify financial agreements that ensure lasting growth. Investment in infrastructure, energy, and technology, areas where sustainability and pragmatism rule, will take precedence. In Belize, Venus in Capricorn offers a unique opportunity. Known for its rich biodiversity, particularly its coral reefs, the country could find itself at the center of environmental diplomacy. International partnerships, perhaps with organizations like the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, may bloom, focusing on sustainable development and the protection of natural ecosystems. Belize's calm, calculated approach will align well with Capricorn's energy, allowing it to secure vital agreements that could shape its environmental future for years to come. The global impacts on Central America, between bold reforms and measured growth. November 2024 is not a passive month for Central America, it is a time of action, transformation, and recalibration. Mars in Leo fuels leaders with ambition and a desire to take bold, often aggressive steps to reshape their country's narratives. In El Salvador, Bukele's leadership could reach new heights, or face new challenges, as his government pushes forward with controversial policies aimed at securing power and fortifying national identity. Panama, ever mindful of its role in global trade, may make dramatic moves to reinforce its strategic position, though internal conflicts could simmer beneath the surface. But as Mars charges ahead, Venus in Capricorn tempers the region's more impulsive tendencies. This is not a time for rash decisions, it is a time for building, carefully, thoughtfully, and with an eye on the future. For nations like Panama and El Salvador, this means securing the kind of long-term financial agreements that can weather the storms of global uncertainty. Infrastructure, energy, and technology will take center stage as countries seek to modernize without losing sight of stability. Belize, standing as a bridge between the Caribbean and Central America, finds itself at the heart of environmental diplomacy. The pressure to protect its coral reefs and natural habitats intensifies under Venus's pragmatic influence, as international partners look to solidify agreements that not only protect the planet but ensure Belize's place in the global environmental conversation. November 15, 2024. Saturn direct in Pisces, healthcare and humanitarian reforms unleashed. Saturn, the planet of structure and responsibility, awakens from its retrograde in Pisces. No longer held in the contemplative pause of its retrograde phase, Saturn's direct motion brings a renewed focus on healthcare, social services, and the very institutions that uphold the fabric of society. In El Salvador, where public health systems have long struggled under the weight of inefficiency, this shift signals the beginning of long-awaited reforms. The government may now push to expand healthcare access, targeting underserved communities whose needs have been ignored for far too long. Expect conversations surrounding universal healthcare, partnerships with global health organizations, and the restructuring of healthcare delivery systems to dominate the national discourse. In Panama, this same planetary shift could spark efforts to bolster social security frameworks, as the country looks to strengthen its support for the aging population and vulnerable communities. Collaborations with organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO, or the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, might materialize, providing both technical expertise and financial assistance. The air is thick with the promise of reform, yet the challenge lies in ensuring these reforms are implemented sustainably and effectively. The full moon in Taurus, a reckoning for resource-based economies. As the full moon glows in the earthy, grounded sign of Taurus, its light shines directly on the global financial systems that underpin resource-based economies in Central America. Belize, with its economy tied closely to agriculture and tourism, finds itself at a crossroads. This full moon demands a reckoning with how the country manages and values its natural resources. The volatility in global markets threatens key exports like sugar, bananas, and seafood, making it clear that careful stewardship of resources is essential for economic survival. This lunar influence urges Belize to reassess its strategies, balancing the need for economic growth with the imperative of environmental conservation. Panama, a linchpin of global trade, feels the full moon's pull acutely as well. The Panama Canal, an artery of international commerce, may now come under review. Leaders must contemplate how best to maintain the country's role as a central hub in the face of shifting market conditions and environmental challenges. The full moon's energy brings urgency to Panama's financial strategies, pushing for resilience and adaptability in an unpredictable global economy. Jupiter-Saturn square, tension between expansion and restraint. But even as the full moon lights the way, tensions rise. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini forms a challenging square with Saturn, creating friction in governance and communication. Central American nations, eager to expand their influence in sectors like education, media, and trade, may find their ambitions thwarted by miscalculations in policy. The square suggests that leaders will struggle to balance the desire for growth with the necessity for sustainable, long-term planning. Economic missteps could lead to internal conflict, as institutions wrestle with the competing pressures of modernization and restraint. The dream of rapid expansion faces harsh realities. There is only so much that can be achieved without proper foundations in place. Mid-November 2024. Saturn-Uranus and Jupiter-Uranus sextiles, innovation meets governance. Yet, even amid these challenges, the cosmos offers a rare gift. The Saturn-Uranus sextile creates an opening for productive, disciplined innovation. Central American countries, particularly Belize and El Salvador, could seize this moment to integrate new technologies into critical sectors like agriculture, energy, and finance. For Belize, this could mean advancements in sustainable tourism, using technology to both protect biodiversity and increase the nation's economic resilience. Water management and biodiversity preservation take center stage, with the potential for breakthroughs that secure Belize's place as a leader in ecotourism. In Panama, the Saturn-Uranus sextile may lead to technological advancements in energy and infrastructure. As the country continues to modernize the areas surrounding the Panama Canal, leaders might explore innovative energy solutions to reduce Panama's carbon footprint while reinforcing its position in global logistics. It's a delicate balance, but the sextile energy supports these forward-thinking endeavors, blending technological progress with the steady governance that Saturn in Pisces demands. The Jupiter-Uranus sextile amplifies this innovative spirit, fostering breakthroughs in climate change adaptation and financial restructuring. Panama could further cement its role as a leader in sustainable trade by developing new systems to manage its water resources and shipping infrastructure. Meanwhile, El Salvador's bold experiment with cryptocurrency may gain traction, potentially integrating digital governance more deeply into its financial system. As these countries push the boundaries of innovation, they are also challenged to ensure that these advancements serve the greater good, fostering economic stability and social progress. November's cosmic crucible, Central America's political tensions and environmental reckoning. As the celestial symphony of mid-November 2024 unfolds, a powerful dynamic takes hold across Central America. The cosmic tension between Jupiter and Saturn brings to the forefront the delicate balance between growth and restraint, a theme that echoes across a region grappling with expanding populations, limited resources, and deep-seated social inequalities. These planetary forces do not merely reflect distant stars but mirror the urgent political and environmental challenges Central American nations face, setting the stage for profound change. Political dynamics and social movements, growth amidst strain. Under the weight of the Jupiter-Saturn square, the push and pull between expansion and caution dominates the political atmosphere. Nowhere is this more evident than in El Salvador, where President Nayib Bukele's administration stands at a crossroads. The country is under pressure to fulfill promises of economic prosperity while managing the harsh realities of crime, poverty, and mass migration. With Jupiter's expansive energy pulling against Saturn's grounding influence, Bukele's government may face mounting criticism, especially if miscommunications or delays hinder the enactment of vital new legislation. Immigration policies, particularly those linked to bilateral agreements with the United States, may become a flashpoint, as the complex web of migration and labor rights demands swift, yet careful, reform. In Belize, this celestial tension breathes new life into social movements advocating for economic equality, environmental protection, and indigenous rights. As the full moon rises in Taurus, its energy illuminates long-standing inequalities in resource distribution. Belize's indigenous communities, long at odds with large-scale tourism projects and agricultural policies that threaten their land and environment, may seize this moment to galvanize their activism. What begins as quiet rumblings of dissatisfaction may erupt into organized resistance, demanding a more equitable distribution of resources and stricter environmental protections. Natural disasters and environmental concerns, nature's response to the stars. The planetary alignments of mid-November 2024 paint a vivid picture of environmental vulnerability across Central America, a region that stands on the front lines of climate change and natural disasters. The full moon in Taurus, often associated with environmental shifts, signals a heightened risk of natural events, earthquakes, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions. Panama, with its critical role in global trade via the Panama Canal, must brace itself. Even the slightest disruption to the canal's operations could send shockwaves through international shipping routes, with devastating economic consequences for the world at large. For countries like Panama and Belize, the celestial warning is clear. Vigilance is necessary, not just for immediate survival but for long-term sustainability. As natural disasters loom on the horizon, governments must not only react to crises but also adopt proactive measures to protect their vital infrastructure and natural resources. Global influence and organizations, a broader mission. The influence of the stars extends beyond the borders of Central America. Throughout this period, international organizations like the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, and the World Bank will play pivotal roles in guiding financial reforms. As El Salvador and Panama seek stability amidst economic uncertainty, these global institutions may step in to provide much-needed assistance, bolstering efforts to attract sustainable investment and improve financial resilience. Their involvement underscores the importance of long-term strategic planning, particularly in the face of mounting global challenges. In Belize and Panama, the United Nations (UN), through its environmental programs, could amplify its support for green technologies and conservation strategies, aiming to protect fragile ecosystems such as coral reefs and rainforests. Belize's continued push to preserve its biodiversity, coupled with Panama's strategic importance in global trade, highlights the delicate balance between development and conservation that these nations must navigate. Meanwhile, regional organizations like the Central American Integration System, SICA, will prove crucial in fostering cross-border cooperation. As the planets align, the symbolism of Saturn in Pisces takes on new significance. Saturn's influence speaks to a collective responsibility, a long-term commitment to improving healthcare, humanitarian aid, and disaster preparedness. SICA's role in addressing these regional challenges will be instrumental in uniting Central American nations to face their shared trials, from migration crises to environmental threats. November 17–18, 2024, Mercury trine Jupiter, diplomacy and expansion. Mercury and Jupiter, the celestial messengers of communication and expansion, join forces in a powerful trine, setting the tone for increased diplomacy and international collaboration. Central America, often at the crossroads of global discussions, feels the impact as this aspect enhances cross-cultural exchanges, trade negotiations, and educational reforms. In El Salvador, a country already navigating the complexities of digital governance and cryptocurrency, this cosmic energy amplifies the nation's efforts to solidify international agreements. Talks surrounding blockchain technology, global financial partnerships, and digital innovation could gain traction as El Salvador seeks to further integrate its digital economy on the world stage. But beyond financial innovation, this trine offers El Salvador a window to strengthen its educational system. Collaborations on vocational training and higher education programs, particularly in technology and sustainable agriculture, are likely to flourish, aligning the country's workforce with future global demands. For Belize, the conversation shifts towards its greatest asset, its rich biodiversity. The Mercury-Jupiter trine supports diplomatic negotiations that focus on environmental conservation and sustainable tourism. As the world's attention turns to climate change, Belize's strategic use of this planetary alignment could lead to groundbreaking environmental treaties. Global media outlets may shine a light on Belize's conservation efforts, giving rise to public awareness campaigns on climate change and natural resource management. This trine also creates fertile ground for Belize's media sector, empowering local voices to drive conversations on environmental justice and sustainable development. Meanwhile, Panama, a critical player in global commerce due to the Panama Canal, finds itself in the midst of high-level trade discussions. Jupiter's expansive energy encourages Panama to deepen its partnerships with trading blocs and neighboring countries, ensuring that its global trade routes remain efficient and competitive. The trine's influence also nurtures cross-cultural exchanges, positioning Panama as a diplomatic leader in both commerce and environmental stewardship. These discussions are more than transactions. They are opportunities for Panama to strengthen its global reputation and solidify its role as a sustainable trade hub. November 17–18, 2024, Saturn-Venus trine, stability in financial and diplomatic relations. As Mercury and Jupiter encourage growth and diplomacy, the trine between Saturn and Venus provides a counterbalance of stability and pragmatism. This planetary alignment favors long-term strategies and disciplined financial management, creating a perfect environment for Central America to reinforce its economic foundations while promoting fairness and sustainability. El Salvador, already in the process of implementing financial reforms, feels the guiding hand of Saturn-Venus, urging a pragmatic approach to infrastructure and investment. International organizations like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank may play pivotal roles in supporting these reforms, ensuring that financial agreements are structured with long-term sustainability in mind. The trine's influence also encourages public-private partnerships, where global corporations collaborate with local governments to develop projects that serve both economic and social interests. This balanced approach ensures that growth is equitable, aligning with Saturn's demand for discipline and Venus's focus on fairness. In Belize, this planetary alignment shifts focus to building durable partnerships with international bodies such as the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, or the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB. The Saturn-Venus trine is a call to action for Belize to prioritize marine conservation and ecotourism, two sectors that are critical to its economy. By securing long-term agreements that emphasize environmental protection and economic stability, Belize positions itself as a leader in sustainable development. This period is not just about immediate gains but about laying the groundwork for future prosperity, where economic progress goes hand in hand with environmental stewardship. For Panama, the trine between Saturn and Venus signals a moment of financial recalibration. As a major financial hub, Panama stands to benefit from renewed commitments to infrastructure development, particularly surrounding the Panama Canal. The trine emphasizes structured, disciplined partnerships that will likely manifest through green finance initiatives. These investments, focused on sustainable projects, align with global climate goals and position Panama as a leader in the transition to a low-carbon economy. Financial institutions in Panama may use this time to expand their global influence, drawing in international investment that supports both financial growth and environmental responsibility. November's spiritual awakening, Central America's compassionate shift toward collective well-being. As the Neptune-Sun trine graces the skies on November 17-18, 2024, Central America finds itself under the soothing, spiritual influence of this cosmic alignment. This harmonious connection between the Sun, symbolizing vitality and leadership, and Neptune, the planet of compassion and dreams, brings forth a wave of humanitarian concern. It encourages nations to look beyond material growth and focus on the deeper, more profound challenges of inequality, poverty, and environmental degradation. The energy of Neptune asks for a return to unity, urging leaders and communities to act with kindness and collective responsibility. El Salvador, a call for compassionate governance. In El Salvador, the Neptune-Sun trine opens a gateway to compassionate governance. Political leaders may feel an undeniable pull to focus on the most vulnerable, those lost in the gaps of poverty and inequality. This trine whispers of new initiatives aimed at social welfare and community development, encouraging programs that uplift underserved populations. Charitable organizations and NGOs, particularly those working in healthcare and education, could rise to prominence, their missions strengthened by the Neptunian influence. As the country reflects on the importance of mental health, the spiritual energy of Neptune could inspire public health reforms, integrating holistic care into the national healthcare system. The message is clear: healing the mind and spirit is as essential as curing the body. This shift might also encourage partnerships with global organizations, amplifying efforts to build a more inclusive and compassionate healthcare system. Belize, environmental humanitarianism and indigenous rights. In Belize, where the land is as sacred as the people who protect it, the Neptune-Sun trine ignites a surge of environmental humanitarianism. As the government and civil society turn their attention to the country's unique ecosystems, they also look to uplift marginalized communities, particularly the indigenous populations who have long stood as stewards of the natural world. This cosmic energy may lead to eco-conscious policies that not only preserve Belize's natural beauty but also provide economic opportunities that benefit both people and the environment. International donors and environmental organizations may take notice of Belize's efforts, bringing increased support to initiatives aimed at deforestation prevention, coral reef preservation, and climate change adaptation. This period could mark a turning point, where Belize solidifies its role as a global leader in sustainable tourism and environmental protection, with Neptune's influence offering a vision of harmony between progress and preservation. Panama, promoting collective well-being on the global stage. As a major player in global trade, Panama's role in this cosmic narrative is no less important. Under the Neptune-Sun trine, Panama may look beyond its bustling economic engine to focus on promoting collective well-being, both within its borders and on the international stage. The government could be inspired to take leadership in global humanitarian efforts, aligning its economic growth with climate resilience and sustainable development goals. This spiritual alignment may push Panama to adopt more inclusive policies, ensuring that the fruits of its prosperity are shared by all its citizens. From supporting vulnerable populations to initiating green infrastructure projects, Panama could position itself as a leader in sustainable commerce. The influence of Neptune urges Panama to balance its strategic importance as a trade hub with a deep sense of responsibility for the planet and its people. Global impact, a network of compassion and cooperation. The ripple effects of the Neptune-Sun trine extend beyond national borders, strengthening Central America's ties with international organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO, United Nations, UN, and the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB. The humanitarian energy of Neptune encourages deeper cooperation with these entities, as countries like El Salvador, Belize, and Panama work to address both regional and global challenges. In El Salvador, this energy could manifest through partnerships with the World Bank and UNESCO, focusing on modernizing education systems and reinforcing healthcare infrastructure. Belize, ever conscious of its natural riches, might engage more closely with environmental NGOs and international donors, accelerating efforts in marine conservation and sustainable tourism. For Panama, its role as a global trade hub could attract green investments and sustainable infrastructure projects, further embedding the principles of collective well-being into its national agenda. November's cosmic shift, Central America's diplomatic awakening and leadership in the spotlight. As the Sun strides into Sagittarius on November 22, 2024, a new wave of energy sweeps across Central America, drawing nations into the realms of diplomacy, legal reform, and international cooperation. This transition, ruled by expansive Jupiter, amplifies intellectual curiosity, global trade, and justice, igniting discussions on a global scale. For El Salvador, Belize, and Panama, the Sun's Sagittarian influence sets the stage for profound shifts in governance, economic policy, and international partnerships. At the same time, the Moon in Leo bathes the region in a fiery glow of national pride, intensifying the public's emotional investment in their leaders. El Salvador, expanding horizons in digital diplomacy. As the Sun enters Sagittarius, El Salvador is pulled into the global spotlight, its trailblazing cryptocurrency policies sparking renewed international dialogue. The nation, already a pioneer in digital financial innovation, now seeks to align itself more deeply with global regulations, drawing in foreign investors intrigued by its bold economic strategies. Diplomatic channels will likely heat up, as El Salvador strives to position itself as a leader in the future of digital economies. Yet, it's not just about economics. Sagittarius' philosophical nature may also steer the country into conversations about legal reforms and judicial transparency. Discussions around human rights could take center stage, as the government seeks to prove its commitment to aligning with global standards of governance. El Salvador's leadership will need to tread carefully, balancing its innovative spirit with the diplomatic sensitivities of a globalized world. Belize, championing eco-diplomacy and trade. In Belize, where the environment and economy are intertwined, Sagittarius influence brings the nation to the negotiating table for international environmental agreements. This period offers a prime opportunity for Belize to strengthen partnerships focused on ecotourism and sustainable development. The country's rich biodiversity becomes its calling card, drawing global attention to its efforts in protecting its natural resources while building a robust, environmentally conscious tourism industry. Sagittarius' expansive energy may also push Belize into broader trade discussions with its Caribbean and Central American neighbors, and possibly even larger trading blocs like the European Union. At the same time, educational reforms may rise to the forefront, with an emphasis on vocational training aimed at empowering the next generation. Belize's focus on these reforms reflects a strategic investment in its youth, positioning them at the heart of the country's long-term economic growth. Panama, strategizing global trade and legal frameworks. Panama, ever the linchpin of global trade, finds itself swept into high-stakes negotiations under the Sun's Sagittarian influence. This period highlights Panama's pivotal role in global commerce, with the Panama Canal at the heart of discussions on trade agreements and infrastructure investments. The nation's leaders may secure new diplomatic alliances with major economic powers, solidifying Panama's place as an essential player in international trade. The energy of Sagittarius could also stimulate debate over legal frameworks governing international shipping, as Panama seeks to refine its policies to ensure smoother and more efficient global commerce. With its strategic importance in mind, the country is poised to position itself as a hub for modernized trade and logistics, leveraging Sagittarius' expansive nature to foster growth. Moon in Leo, the roar of national pride. Simultaneously, as the moon enters Leo, the emotional pulse of the region intensifies. In El Salvador, President Nayib Bukele finds himself at the center of this celestial drama. His bold leadership style, already a focal point of national pride and debate, now draws even greater attention. The moon in Leo shines a spotlight on his administration, amplifying public emotions. Salvadorans may rally around issues of national sovereignty, celebrating victories or debating Bukele's more controversial policies. It is a time of heightened visibility for leaders, and Bukele must navigate these emotional currents with precision. For Belize, the moon's leonine energy stirs deep sentiments about national identity, particularly concerning environmental protection. Leaders who can project confidence and a clear vision for the country's future will win the public's favor, especially as Belize continues to prioritize the environment. However, those who falter in addressing pressing public concerns may face sharp criticism. Panama, too, feels the heat of the moon in Leo. Leaders will be thrust into the public eye, their handling of economic policies and the nation's strategic role in international trade closely scrutinized. The Leo moon may embolden Panama's leadership to take bolder steps, asserting the country's significance on the global stage while balancing internal demands for fair economic distribution. Public sentiment could drive leaders to emphasize national pride and economic progress, pushing them toward decisive actions that strengthen Panama's standing in both regional and global contexts. Leo rising, Taurus midheaven, Central America's bold leadership and grounded resource management. As the sun enters a fiery new chapter in Sagittarius, the skies paint a dynamic picture for Central America, with a Leo rising and Taurus midheaven guiding the region's cosmic journey. These astrological influences place self-expression, leadership, and financial responsibility at the forefront. Central America stands poised to embrace its sovereignty and solidify its place in the global landscape, as leaders draw strength from Leo's regal energy while grounding their ambitions in the practical wisdom of Taurus. The coming days will challenge nations like Panama, El Salvador, and Belize to not only assert their independence but to manage their resources wisely, ensuring that their bold moves today lead to sustainable growth tomorrow. Panama, asserting sovereignty in global trade. Leo rising at the sun's ingress highlights Panama's desire to project confidence and strength on the global stage. As the gatekeeper of one of the world's most vital trade routes, Panama's leadership will focus on reinforcing its control over the Panama Canal, ensuring that its sovereignty is respected in all trade negotiations. Diplomatic efforts may intensify, with leaders skillfully navigating external pressures related to resource management and global commerce. Panama's position as a sovereign powerhouse will be reasserted, with leaders projecting boldness in their economic policies while balancing international relations. At the same time, the Taurus midheaven provides a steadying hand, reminding Panama of the importance of financial stability and sustainable practices. As the world's economic landscape shifts, Panama's leadership must ensure that the infrastructure supporting the canal remains resilient, adapting to future challenges like climate change. The influence of Taurus will likely push discussions about sustainable trade and economic reforms, ensuring that Panama's financial strategies are as grounded as they are ambitious. El Salvador, framing a vision of independence. In El Salvador, the Leo rising brings a surge of national pride, with leaders inspired to take bold steps toward reinforcing the country's political and economic independence. The nation's cryptocurrency policies, already at the forefront of international discussions, may be reframed as a cornerstone of El Salvador's future, projecting a vision of financial autonomy. Leo's influence emboldens leaders to stand tall on the global stage, crafting policies that resonate with the country's evolving identity. But the Taurus midheaven tempers this boldness with a focus on practical governance, reminding El Salvador of the need for financial stability and resource management. As leaders navigate international relations, they must also prioritize policies that safeguard the economy's long-term viability. The balance between visionary leadership and grounded financial planning will be critical for ensuring that El Salvador's independence remains sustainable in the years ahead. Belize, guarding natural resources and national pride. For Belize, where natural resources and tourism are pillars of the economy, the Leo rising encourages a strong assertion of national sovereignty and environmental protection. As international negotiations unfold, particularly around ecotourism and biodiversity preservation, Belize's leaders may feel the need to stand firm, expressing pride in their country's unique role in the global environmental landscape. The public, energized by the Leo moon's influence, will rally around these causes, demanding that leaders protect the nation's natural heritage while pursuing economic growth. The Taurus midheaven, however, reminds Belize to balance these efforts with practical, long-term economic strategies. The country's leadership must ensure that its policies not only promote environmental sustainability but also guarantee the financial stability of its tourism sector. This celestial alignment pushes Belize toward policies that safeguard its biodiversity while laying the groundwork for sustainable economic development, ensuring that future generations benefit from both the land and the opportunities it provides. Political dynamics, navigating public sentiment and sovereignty. The combined energies of the Sun in Sagittarius and the Moon in Leo infuse Central American politics with optimism, emotional intensity, and a fierce sense of national pride. In El Salvador, leaders will find themselves at the center of heated public debates, with the nation swinging between admiration for bold leadership and criticism of controversial policies. Those who can channel the Sagittarian spirit of diplomacy and forward-thinking governance will likely succeed, while those who overlook the emotional pulse of the people may face backlash. In Belize, the public's focus will remain on issues of environmental preservation and economic stability, with the Leo moon encouraging a deep connection to national identity. Leaders who can articulate a strong vision for Belize's future, particularly in areas like territorial integrity and eco-conscious trade policies, will be able to harness public support. The Sagittarian optimism will fuel long-term planning, but only if it aligns with the values of the nation's people. Panama, with its role as a trade hub, will experience intense public scrutiny as leaders work to balance economic growth with the need for national sovereignty. The Leo moon amplifies the public's emotional investment in Panama's leadership, demanding bold action that asserts the country's strategic importance on the global stage. Public figures will face pressure to deliver strong, decisive governance, with the public watching closely to ensure that the benefits of economic prosperity are distributed fairly. November 22, 2024, Saturn-Mercury trine, solidifying long-term strategies. The Saturn-Mercury trine brings clarity and structure to conversations across Central America, infusing negotiations and policymaking with a grounded energy. This is a time for disciplined, strategic dialogue, where nations can lay the foundation for future growth. For El Salvador, the trine offers a chance to fine-tune its cryptocurrency policies and digital economy strategies. As the world watches El Salvador's bold financial experiment, Saturn's influence pushes leaders to focus on institutional accountability and transparency. Expect detailed discussions around governance reforms, especially in the judicial and financial sectors, as the country aims to strengthen its reputation in international markets. Belize, with its abundant natural resources and growing ecotourism sector, will feel the effects of this trine in its environmental negotiations. Long-term strategies to protect biodiversity and sustainable tourism will take center stage, with the trine facilitating thoughtful discussions on balancing development with conservation. Trade relationships, particularly those tied to agriculture and regional partnerships, will also benefit from the disciplined energy, pushing Belize toward agreements that ensure both environmental and economic resilience. For Panama, the Saturn-Mercury trine highlights the importance of securing the future of the Panama Canal. As a critical artery of global commerce, the canal's long-term sustainability is paramount. Panama's leaders will engage in structured trade negotiations, focusing on infrastructure development and policies that guarantee the canal's continued efficiency. Discussions around regional security and migration issues may also surface, as the trine encourages structured diplomacy to address these pressing concerns. November 25, 2024, Mercury retrograde, a time for reflection and reassessment. As Mercury turns retrograde on November 25, the smooth flow of communication begins to stall, signaling a period of reflection for Central American countries. For El Salvador, this retrograde may bring delays in the implementation of financial agreements and economic reforms. Leaders may find themselves revisiting recent educational policies, particularly those focused on digital learning and technology integration in schools. The retrograde suggests that foreign investment may also face setbacks, as potential investors demand more clarity before committing. In Belize, the retrograde could disrupt the flow of trade and tourism. Eco-tourism campaigns may need to be restructured, and logistical challenges could force the government to reassess its trade agreements, particularly those tied to agricultural exports. This cosmic pause may also prompt Belize to revisit its educational programs, ensuring they align with both regional and global market needs. For Panama, the retrograde energy spells potential delays in shipping logistics and trade negotiations. The Panama Canal, a vital link in global trade, could face operational bottlenecks, prompting a reassessment of infrastructure and logistical processes. Trade agreements with key global partners may need to be revisited, and the retrograde period may expose weaknesses in Panama's travel and communication systems, calling for swift corrections to avoid long-term disruptions. As November 2024 draws to a close, the celestial symphony reaches a critical crescendo. Uranus-Pluto trine, revolutionizing agriculture and finance. The steady influence of the Uranus-Pluto trine continues to ripple through Central America, particularly affecting the critical sectors of agriculture and finance. In Belize, the nation's reliance on agricultural exports, sugar, bananas, and seafood, faces disruption. Yet, this challenge is also an opportunity. The trine between Uranus and Taurus and Pluto encourages the country to explore sustainable agricultural practices, ushering in a new era of innovation in resource management and energy production. Belize, already rich in biodiversity, may find its path forward through the integration of green technologies that promise both environmental sustainability and economic resilience. Panama, on the other hand, feels the weight of the Uranus-Pluto trine in its financial landscape. As a global trade hub, Panama's economic stability hinges on trade policies and infrastructure development. Yet, Uranus in Taurus shakes the global trade networks, urging Panama to rethink its long-term financial strategies. This is a time for Panama to embrace technological advancements, particularly in sustainable energy and infrastructure, ensuring its future dominance in global commerce. The trine signals that disruptions are not just challenges, they are catalysts for reinvention. Neptune-Pluto sextile, humanitarian focus and institutional reform. While the Uranus-Pluto trine brings economic shifts, the Neptune-Pluto sextile shines a light on humanitarian concerns and the fragility of institutional integrity. For El Salvador, this aspect emphasizes the need for public health and social welfare reforms. The country's ongoing struggles with inequality and corruption come to the forefront, pushing leaders to confront systemic weaknesses. The sextile's compassionate energy invites El Salvador to focus on protecting its most vulnerable populations, from healthcare reform to anti-corruption initiatives that promise to reshape the nation's future. Panama, too, is influenced by this humanitarian focus. The nation's strategic position in global trade also makes it a focal point for migration policies and the protection of those affected by climate change and economic instability. The Neptune-Pluto sextile encourages Panama to lead with empathy, adopting policies that address both its role in global commerce and its responsibility to protect displaced and vulnerable populations. Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn, the end of an era. As Pluto inches through the final degrees of Capricorn, Central America stands at the threshold of profound institutional transformation. Pluto in Capricorn has reshaped global power structures, consolidating economic systems and centralizing governance. Now, as this era draws to a close, the region faces the culmination of long-term processes that have redefined its approach to governance and economic stability. For El Salvador, Belize, and Panama, this is the end of a chapter marked by institutional reforms and economic restructuring. But Pluto's imminent transition into Aquarius in 2025 signals a new beginning, one defined by collective innovation, technological advancement, and social progress. These nations are poised to embrace policies that prioritize sustainability, equity, and inclusion, setting the stage for a brighter, more just future in the global landscape. Reflecting on November's transformations. The final week of November 2024 is one of immense consequence for Central America. The Saturn-Mercury trine fosters disciplined communication and clarity in policymaking, allowing nations to strategize effectively around economic governance, trade, and diplomacy. Yet, the onset of Mercury retrograde on November 25 serves as a cosmic reminder to pause, reflect, and reassess previous decisions, especially in the realms of education, trade, and financial policies. As the month draws to a close, the Uranus-Pluto trine and Neptune-Pluto sextile guide the region through a period of deep transformation. Economic strategies are redefined, governance systems are restructured, and humanitarian concerns are brought to the forefront. The end of Pluto's journey through Capricorn marks the conclusion of an era of consolidation, preparing the region for a new chapter filled with innovation and social progress. A new era on the horizon. As Central America steps into the future, the lessons of November 2024 will remain pivotal. The strategic foundations laid during this time will determine how these nations navigate the global challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. With sustainability, technological advancement, and inclusive governance as guiding principles, El Salvador, Belize, and Panama are poised to lead the way into a new era of collective growth and progress. What comes next will undoubtedly reshape not just the region, but the global stage. Keep watching. November has only set the stage for even more intriguing and transformative developments on the horizon. South America's November 2024 astrology forecast. The tides of change. As the Sun and New Moon merge in Scorpio on November 1, 2024, South America braces for a tidal wave of transformation. In the shadows of government halls and bustling trade centers, the planets align to catalyze deep, fundamental shifts. This is no ordinary transition. The Scorpio energy demands a reckoning. Power dynamics teeter as governments from Brazil to Argentina grapple with economic volatility, seeking to stabilize their resource-rich economies. Water, minerals, and energy, the lifeblood of the continent, become focal points in a grand cosmic play. Behind closed doors, the whispers of negotiations intensify, echoing Scorpio's hidden depths. From environmental conservation to social welfare reforms, previously unseen alliances begin to surface. Chile's leadership in renewable energy might spearhead a regional call for sustainability, with key organizations like Mercosur and UNICER poised to solidify trade agreements that echo far beyond borders. Saturn in Pisces lends its disciplined hand, guiding institutions through the murky waters of reform. The stern yet compassionate energy of Saturn demands accountability, pushing governments to rethink their management of natural resources. The old must give way to the new, and as the Earth breathes in time with the stars, hidden strategies unravel into the light. But the changes don't stop there. On November 3, 2024, Mercury sweeps into Sagittarius, unleashing a torrent of conversations that crisscross the continent. The fiery optimism of Sagittarius breathes new life into diplomatic channels, as South American nations lean into discussions about education, law, and justice. Bold ideas emerge, and in countries like Brazil and Colombia, there's a growing chorus advocating for indigenous rights and environmental justice. Imagine the fervor of leaders standing before global forums, their voices igniting calls for reforms that resonate with a broader, interconnected world. Yet, Sagittarius' boundless enthusiasm carries its own caution. Promises bloom like wildflowers, but some may wither in the harsh reality of overextended ambitions. Trade agreements may glitter with hope, but regional complexities will require more than just expansive ideals. They demand follow-through, practical strategy, and a rooted understanding of each country's limitations. As November progresses, the planets weave a complex tapestry. In South America, where the Amazon's heartbeat pulses in the veins of its people, the astrological influences reflect not just political maneuvering but the soul of a continent rising to meet its future. Grassroots movements, fueled by Scorpio's transformative energy and Sagittarius optimism, gain momentum. Environmental protests might swell, while activists fight for educational reforms that seek to bridge gaps exacerbated by digital divides. The people feel the pull of change as much as their leaders do. The roar of Mars in Leo, November 5, 2024. As Mars charges into Leo on November 5, 2024, a wave of fiery confidence ignites leadership across South America. Leaders, emboldened by the fierce energy of Leo, step into the spotlight with ambitions as grand as the Andes. In nations like Venezuela, where political turmoil brews, this transit signals a moment of consolidation. Leaders may seize this time to assert dominance, rallying their bases with promises of strength and resilience. Argentina, too, may witness its government take a more authoritative stance, using the Mars-Leo alignment to project power both at home and on the international stage. But with Leo's drive comes the risk of clashing egos. Mars in Leo thrives on competition, and within South America's borders, this may stir up old rivalries. Disputes over natural resources, particularly the sacred waters of the continent's rivers or the wealth buried beneath its soil, could reach a boiling point. Imagine the tense exchanges between nations over access to mining rights or the ecological lifeblood of the Amazon basin. The Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, which aims to protect the vast jungle's integrity, could find itself navigating heated discussions as Mars fans the flames of conflict. The planet of action in the sign of the Lion doesn't leave room for passivity. From the bustling streets of Caracas to the quiet corridors of Brasilia, the intensity will be palpable. Yet, despite the friction, Mars in Leo also calls forth the courage to act. South American leaders may emerge from this period with bold reforms in hand, though not without scars from the battles waged in the pursuit of greatness. Venus in Capricorn, the steady hand of pragmatism on November 12, 2024. As Venus takes her throne in Capricorn on November 12, a new chapter unfolds, one marked by discipline, structure, and cautious optimism. Venus, the planet of harmony and values, tempers the aggressive momentum set by Mars, turning South America's gaze toward long-term stability. The pragmatic energy of Capricorn brings sobriety to financial discussions, urging nations to think beyond the immediate and secure their economic futures with care. This is no time for hasty deals or flashy diplomacy. Rather, Venus in Capricorn beckons South American nations to forge lasting partnerships rooted in mutual benefit. In Chile and Peru, where mining forms the backbone of the economy, this transit heralds a time of strategic negotiation. Governments may sign resource contracts with global powers, focusing not only on profits but on sustainability and future-proofing their economies. Picture boardrooms where mining executives, government officials, and foreign investors gather to solidify deals that will span decades, ensuring that South America's rich mineral wealth is both preserved and wisely utilized. Moreover, the Capricorn influence extends its careful touch to regional financial systems. With inflation and currency stability weighing heavily on many South American nations, This Venusian transit encourages steady, thoughtful reforms. Financial institutions like the Development Bank of Latin America, CAF, and the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, may lead the charge, investing in projects designed to bolster economies while keeping social responsibility at the forefront. Sustainable investments, designed to weather both economic storms and the pressures of global markets, take center stage. While the steady hand of Venus in Capricorn may not inspire the grandeur of Mars in Leo, it offers something far more precious: resilience. As South American nations build toward financial stability, the quiet progress of Venus in Capricorn ensures that these foundations, though forged in patience, will stand the test of time. Expect the region's policymakers to weigh each move carefully, knowing that every step forward is a step toward a more prosperous, equitable future. The turning point, Saturn direct, full moon in Taurus, and the Jupiter-Saturn square on November 15, 2024. As Saturn stations direct in Pisces on November 15, 2024, South America stands at the crossroads of reflection and action. The retrograde phase had pressed pause on progress, forcing governments and organizations to reassess their strategies in healthcare and social welfare. Now, with Saturn moving forward, the gears of reform begin to turn again. In nations like Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, where inequalities remain stark, the focus shifts to the most vulnerable: indigenous populations, low-income families, and communities lacking adequate health care. The Pan-American Health Organization, PAHO, emerges as a guiding force, pushing for systemic change across the region's public health infrastructure. But this moment isn't only about hospitals and healthcare systems. Saturn's direct motion in Pisces brings a quiet but powerful commitment to long-term humanitarian projects. South America's struggles with social inequities, from housing shortages to educational disparities, demand careful and compassionate solutions. Expect to see nations building on earlier discussions to implement lasting reforms that could reshape their future, particularly for those communities that have been historically overlooked. In the cities and the Amazon's depths alike, the conversation turns to inclusive care, with a vision that extends beyond immediate relief and reaches toward enduring stability. As the full moon rises in Taurus, the focus intensifies on one of South America's most sensitive areas: its wealth of natural resources. The luminous glow of the moon casts a sharp light on the financial systems that underpin South American economies, most of which are deeply entwined with their resources: oil, minerals, and agricultural exports. Venezuela's oil fields, Chile's copper mines, and Peru's silver reserves come into sharper relief as global markets look to these nations to manage their assets wisely. Under this Taurus moon, sustainability becomes not just an ideal but an economic necessity. Yet this period is fraught with challenges. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini introduces the possibility of misunderstandings or missteps in financial policy. South American leaders must navigate carefully through turbulent waters as fluctuations in commodity prices, particularly oil and copper, threaten to destabilize their already fragile markets. The pressure on institutions like Mercosur and the Andean community intensifies. Miscommunications and policy miscalculations could unravel hard-won economic agreements, throwing regional cooperation into disarray. As Jupiter squares Saturn, the tension between expansion and limitation becomes a central theme. Leaders must walk a tightrope between fueling growth and managing scarce resources. The square between Jupiter and Saturn also highlights a profound tension at the heart of South America's future. Ambitions soar for educational, legal, and media reforms, but the need for restraint in resource management is ever present. Brazil, with its vast natural wealth, faces mounting scrutiny over deforestation and environmental degradation in the Amazon. Chile, with its mining sector, must reconcile the desire for rapid economic expansion with the environmental cost. This planetary aspect demands hard choices: how to grow without destroying what sustains that growth. Mid-November, the power of innovation, Saturn-Uranus and Jupiter-Uranus sextiles. Mid-November offers a glimmer of hope in the form of two harmonious sextiles, Saturn-Uranus and Jupiter-Uranus. This astrological combination is like a cosmic blueprint for innovation. Saturn's discipline meets Uranus's revolutionary energy, creating the perfect conditions for breakthrough reforms. South America, a region rich in agricultural potential and emerging energy technologies, finds itself on the cusp of a revolution. Agroecology, sustainable farming techniques, and climate-resilient agriculture take center stage, particularly in Brazil and Argentina, where agriculture forms the backbone of their economies. In this period, energy transformation takes on a new urgency. Chile, with its solar power capacity, and Brazil, leading in hydropower, could see the groundwork laid for significant energy reforms that reduce dependence on fossil fuels. The Latin American Energy Organization, LAID, will likely play a crucial role in coordinating these regional efforts, potentially positioning South America as a global leader in renewable energy initiatives. Picture vast solar farms spreading across the Atacama Desert and hydroelectric plants powering the lush Brazilian rainforests, a continent leveraging its natural resources for a cleaner, greener future. At the same time, the Jupiter-Uranus sextile sparks a wave of technological innovation. South American nations may find themselves experimenting with new financial systems to cope with economic instability. Cryptocurrency and blockchain technology could offer new avenues for stabilizing struggling economies, with Bolivia's lithium reserves positioning it as a key player in the global shift toward electric energy. This is a period ripe for experimentation, as countries seek inventive solutions to long-standing economic challenges. The sextile energy also fuels international cooperation. Scientific collaborations, particularly those addressing climate change, energy, and healthcare, are likely to accelerate. South America's role in the global fight against climate change grows stronger, as nations contribute to international projects aimed at conserving biodiversity and managing the devastating effects of environmental degradation. With the Amazon rainforest, a global ecological treasure, at stake, the region becomes a focal point for environmental protection efforts. Mercury trine Jupiter, November 17–18, 2024, the winds of diplomatic optimism. As Mercury forms a harmonious trine with Jupiter on November 17–18, 2024, South America enters a period of intellectual growth and diplomatic expansion. This alignment, flowing with optimism and the spirit of collaboration, acts as a bridge between internal governance and global partnerships. The energy of this trine invites countries across the continent to engage more actively in international discourse, with leaders like Brazil and Argentina taking the reins in global forums. At institutions like the United Nations and the Organization of American States, OAS, these nations will shine, championing discussions on education, trade, and media policies, seeking to elevate South America's voice on the global stage. Closer to home, the power of this trine radiates through regional organizations like Mercosur and the Andean Community. The time is ripe for transformative educational reforms, with the focus on making higher education more accessible and integrating digital technologies into school curriculums. Countries like Colombia and Uruguay could lead the charge in revamping their education systems, aiming to reduce the digital divide and preparing their youth for a future defined by technology and innovation. Media landscapes, too, are poised for expansion. South America, rich in cultural diversity and history, may see new initiatives that promote its unique heritage, fostering cross-cultural exchanges and strengthening bonds with international audiences. Yet, as the enthusiasm of this alignment swells, caution is needed. The air of optimism carries a temptation toward overpromising. Governments may find themselves swept up in the possibilities of trade negotiations, especially in key sectors like agriculture and technology. While this can lead to meaningful connections with global powers, there's a risk that some agreements, particularly those championed by nations like Chile and Peru, might falter if expectations are set too high. Idealism, unchecked by pragmatism, could lead to delays in realizing the full benefits of these partnerships. Saturn-Venus trine, November 17–18, 2024, the anchor of stability. Where Mercury and Jupiter bring buoyant optimism, the Saturn-Venus trine offers a much-needed counterbalance of stability and prudence. This harmonious aspect fosters a grounded approach to both financial and diplomatic affairs across South America. Countries that have exercised fiscal discipline and maintained steady economic strategies, Chile and Uruguay, in particular, may find themselves reaping the rewards during this time. With foreign investors looking for stability in an unpredictable global market, these nations could attract new economic opportunities, bolstering their long-term financial standing. This stabilizing influence will extend into regional cooperation as well. Agreements within Mercosur and the Pacific Alliance may crystallize, solidifying trade partnerships and joint ventures. Imagine the energy, infrastructure, and technology sectors lighting up with renewed collaboration. The Saturn-Venus trine favors long-term planning, making this an ideal time for countries to negotiate deals that ensure sustained growth. Resource-rich nations like Brazil and Peru may enter into agreements centered on sustainable resource management, securing partnerships that support the environmental and economic resilience of the region. At the heart of this aspect is an emphasis on durability and sustainability. Financial institutions, such as the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, may play a pivotal role during this time, offering guidance and support for South American nations seeking to fortify their economies against future shocks. Inflation, currency volatility, and external economic pressures are constant threats, but with Saturn's steady hand, governments are likely to prioritize infrastructure projects that enhance their long-term stability. Projects focused on renewable energy, public transportation, and digital infrastructure could gain momentum, helping South America become more resilient in the face of global economic shifts. Neptune-Sun trine, November 17–18, 2024, a compassionate awakening. As Neptune and the Sun form a gentle trine on November 17–18, 2024, South America is bathed in a spiritual glow, awakening a deep sense of compassion across the continent. This aspect calls on leaders to embrace empathy, encouraging policies that prioritize collective well-being and social justice. In nations like Venezuela and Bolivia, where poverty and inequality continue to challenge progress, Neptune's influence offers a moment for humanitarian reform. Political figures may rise with renewed commitment to addressing the needs of their most vulnerable citizens, drawing upon the energy of Neptune's boundless compassion to fuel reforms in healthcare, education, and welfare. The influence of this aspect reaches beyond policy into the heart of South America's cultural and spiritual fabric. Indigenous spiritual traditions, long sidelined in national discourse, may come into focus during this time. In Ecuador and Peru, where indigenous communities hold powerful cultural influence, the integration of these traditions into national governance could deepen. Leaders might look to these ancestral practices for guidance in crafting environmental policies that honor the land and its people, particularly as deforestation in the Amazon remains a critical issue. The global implications of this Neptune-Sun trine are significant. South American nations, with their strong histories of advocating for social justice, may take on larger roles in international humanitarian efforts. The continent could become a voice for global compassion, leading initiatives with organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO, and the International Red Cross to address climate change, food security, and disaster relief. South America, under this celestial influence, is poised to champion more inclusive, humanitarian solutions to the world's most pressing challenges, while advocating for the rights of marginalized groups and the protection of natural resources. Sun in Sagittarius, November 22, 2024, a diplomatic expansion. When the Sun strides into Sagittarius on November 22, 2024, the continent feels a shift toward optimism, intellectual growth, and international collaboration. Sagittarius, a sign of exploration and diplomacy, urges South American nations to widen their influence on the world stage. Countries like Brazil and Chile, already key players in regional politics, may lead diplomatic efforts at forums like the United Nations and the Organization of American States, OAS. Here, discussions could center on justice, legal reforms, and global trade agreements, with these nations pushing for educational and legal advancements that benefit marginalized communities. Sagittarius fuels a sense of adventure and idealism. Leaders may pursue new trade treaties or revise existing partnerships in strategic sectors such as agriculture, energy, and technology, industries where South America holds significant global leverage. Brazil, with its expansive agricultural output, and Chile, with its robust mining sector, are likely to spearhead these efforts, looking to strengthen economic ties that support both regional growth and global trade networks. However, the energy of Sagittarius must be handled with care. While it promotes big ideas and global ambitions, there is a risk of overpromising. Leaders may be tempted to push initiatives that sound progressive but lack the necessary infrastructure to support immediate implementation. The key challenge will be ensuring that lofty aspirations are grounded in practical reality, avoiding any diplomatic missteps that could hinder long-term progress. Moon in Leo, November 22, 2024, a surge of national pride. As the moon roars into Leo on the same day, South America experiences a surge of national pride and emotional intensity. The moon in Leo shines a spotlight on leadership, stirring deep emotional connections between the people and their leaders. In countries like Argentina, where strong political personalities are often met with fervent public support or opposition, the Leo moon amplifies these dynamics. Charismatic leaders may find themselves basking in public adoration, but they must also face heightened expectations. Political rallies and national events, charged with Leo's bold energy, may increase in intensity. In the streets of Buenos Aires, Caracas, or Sao Paulo, citizens may rally with patriotic fervor, demanding decisive action from their governments. Leo's fire fuels both public support and discontent, depending on how well leaders align their actions with national aspirations. It's a time of passionate speeches, where leaders can either inspire their nations or provoke heated debates that echo across the continent. The energy of this transit extends beyond government offices and into the heart of social movements. Leo's emotional wave gives voice to groups advocating for indigenous rights, environmental protection, and economic reforms. The calls for protecting the Amazon rainforest, for example, may find new strength during this period. The people's desire for bold, transformative leadership reaches a fever pitch, as citizens across the continent demand that their leaders act not just with strength but with a commitment to justice, equity, and sustainability. Leo rising at the sun's ingress, November 22, 2024, a sovereign assertion. As the sun enters Sagittarius with Leo rising on November 22, 2024, the stage is set for South American nations to assert their sovereignty and pride with fierce intensity. This alignment stirs a bold wave of self-expression, urging leaders across the continent to project strength and independence on the global stage. Venezuela and Bolivia, countries often at the center of geopolitical debates and natural resource management, may embrace this moment to take a firm stand. Leo's rising influence pushes them to fiercely defend their autonomy, particularly regarding issues such as resource ownership, trade policies, and geopolitical alliances. Leaders in these countries may harness the power of Leo's regal energy to amplify their political platforms, positioning themselves as champions of their nation's future. Speeches, public rallies, and diplomatic addresses could showcase their charisma and vision, rallying national pride and encouraging their citizens to unite behind a shared cause. However, this energy also brings heightened expectations. The public, fueled by the emotional intensity of Leo, will demand authenticity and bold leadership. Political dynamics may shift dramatically if leaders fail to deliver on promises, as the rising tide of national pride can just as easily turn into discontent. Taurus midheaven, practicality anchored in financial stability. While the fiery influence of Leo stirs passion, the Taurus midheaven offers a steadying force, reminding South American leaders that the long-term prosperity of their nations lies in pragmatic decisions, particularly in the realm of financial stability and resource management. Chile's copper exports, Brazil's agricultural wealth, and Venezuela's oil reserves all come under the spotlight, as Taurus grounded influence calls for sustainable, responsible use of these natural assets. This period urges governments to strike a delicate balance, managing the emotional demands of the population while ensuring financial security. Discussions about sustainable growth within regional bodies like Mercosur and the Development Bank of Latin America, CAF, will likely intensify. Chile and Brazil, with their vast resources, must prioritize policies that prevent environmental degradation, aiming for economic growth that does not sacrifice the ecological future of the continent. In a time of heightened national pride and economic ambition, Taurus midheaven serves as a sobering reminder that wealth must be carefully cultivated, not hastily exploited. Saturn-Mercury trine, November 22, 2024, strategic diplomacy in action. From November 22 to 25, 2024, the Saturn-Mercury trine ushers in a period of meticulous communication and strategic diplomacy across South America. Saturn's steady, disciplined energy in Pisces blends with Mercury's intellectual focus, creating the perfect atmosphere for thoughtful, structured negotiations. This aspect encourages South American leaders to engage in high-level discussions on pressing regional concerns, security, governance, and resource management, focusing on creating long-lasting, sustainable solutions. Frameworks like Mercosur and the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, will likely see renewed energy, as nations like Brazil and Argentina lead efforts to cement agreements that address economic integration, healthcare reforms, and environmental protections. This is a time for detailed, results-oriented planning, where leaders emphasize stability over short-term gains. Countries across the continent will look to use this trine to build the foundations for enduring policies that address both social inequalities and economic challenges, particularly as Saturn in Pisces grounds discussions in humanitarian and social welfare issues. Mercury retrograde, November 25, 2024, reassessment and reflection. As the disciplined energy of the Saturn-Mercury trine fades, Mercury's retrograde motion, beginning on November 25, brings a period of reassessment and potential disruption. For South American nations, this shift represents a pause, a moment to reflect on the agreements and policies initiated during the earlier part of the month. Communication breakdowns, delays in trade, and logistical challenges may arise as the retrograde energy takes hold. Countries like Chile, heavily dependent on copper exports, or Venezuela, with its reliance on oil, could experience setbacks in their trade routes or renegotiations of previous agreements. Mercury retrograde often heralds miscommunications, making international relations and negotiations more fragile. Agreements that seem solid during the Saturn-Mercury trine may need revision, particularly if any oversights or misunderstandings were made in the rush to secure deals. This period also brings a focus on internal affairs, with governments revisiting domestic policies, particularly in education and infrastructure, that may need refinement or recalibration in light of new challenges exposed by the retrograde. Educational reforms, which were a focus earlier in the month, may come under scrutiny as gaps in implementation or execution become apparent. South American governments will be tasked with re-evaluating their progress in addressing the educational needs of marginalized communities, reconsidering the technological integration in schools, and ensuring that reforms align with the long-term goals of equity and accessibility. As November draws to a close, the Uranus-Pluto trine, revolutionizing finance and agriculture. The Uranus-Pluto trine brings an electrifying energy to South America's financial and agricultural sectors. The forces of Uranus, the planet of sudden change, and Pluto, the harbinger of transformation, encourage revolutionary approaches to long-standing issues. Argentina, a powerhouse of agriculture, may find itself facing critical disruptions, whether from external market shifts, unpredictable climate patterns, or resource depletion. But within this upheaval lies the potential for reinvention. Countries across the continent are likely to explore new technologies and sustainable practices, from climate-resilient farming techniques to renewable energy initiatives. Imagine vast fields in Argentina and Brazil adopting agroecological methods that merge ancient farming wisdom with cutting-edge technology, ensuring both profitability and environmental preservation. This trine doesn't just destabilize, it offers the spark of ingenuity needed to create resilient, future-focused economies. Neptune-Pluto sextile, a call for humanitarian reform. While Uranus and Pluto fuel innovation, the Neptune-Pluto sextile underscores a deeper, humanitarian impulse. In South America, where inequality, corruption, and social unrest have long been challenges, this aspect shines a spotlight on institutional failures. Colombia, still healing from decades of internal conflict, may feel the weight of this influence as the sextile pushes for transparency, accountability, and reform. Social movements, emboldened by Neptune's compassionate vision, could surge in numbers, demanding government action on pressing issues such as poverty, healthcare, and indigenous rights. The transformative power of Pluto combined with Neptune's humanitarian energy inspires leaders to think beyond short-term gains, encouraging policies that prioritize the well-being of the collective. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, may gain traction in the region, as governments align their national agendas with global humanitarian efforts, pushing for reforms that address the needs of marginalized populations. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, reassessing diplomacy and education. As Jupiter retrograde continues in Gemini, South American nations turn inward to review their diplomatic strategies and educational systems. Countries like Brazil, heavily involved in regional and global diplomacy, may pause to assess whether their current alliances and trade agreements are truly benefiting their long-term goals. Legal frameworks governing international cooperation could come under scrutiny, as leaders seek to refine treaties and ensure they are equitable and effective. Educational reforms, already underway in several countries, may face additional pressure as governments revisit the policies they've implemented. The quest for inclusive, accessible education becomes even more urgent as the retrograde energy encourages reflection and reassessment. Systems that fall short of these ideals may be restructured, aiming to provide better access to education for underprivileged communities, including indigenous and rural populations. Neptune retrograde in Pisces, revealing institutional weaknesses. Neptune retrograde in Pisces adds an element of revelation, pulling back the veil on hidden weaknesses within political and social institutions. Corruption, government secrecy, and inefficiencies may come to light, potentially triggering political scandals or public outcry. Countries with histories of opaque governance, such as Venezuela, could face intense pressure to reform. As these revelations surface, governments will be forced to confront the systemic issues that have long plagued their nations, with the public demanding accountability and transparency. Uranus retrograde in Taurus, economic and agricultural uncertainty. Adding to the complexity, Uranus retrograde in Taurus introduces further uncertainty into South America's economic and agricultural sectors. Financial markets, which are often volatile in nations like Brazil and Paraguay, may experience sudden disruptions, challenging governments to maintain stability in the face of global economic shifts. Agricultural industries, the backbone of many South American economies, must adapt to these unpredictable conditions. The retrograde energy suggests that traditional methods may no longer be sufficient. Countries will need to rethink their strategies to ensure sustainability, both in terms of financial resilience and environmental protection. End of Pluto in Capricorn, the close of an era. As Pluto moves through the final degrees of Capricorn, South America, along with the rest of the world, stands on the cusp of a profound shift in power dynamics. Pluto's long journey through Capricorn has dismantled outdated structures, exposing the flaws in hierarchical systems and reshaping the continent's approach to governance, resource management, and economic stability. South America has seen the rise and fall of governments, social movements demanding justice, and the reallocation of power, particularly in sectors tied to its rich natural resources. With Pluto preparing to enter Aquarius in 2025, the stage is set for a new era defined by collective innovation and technological advancement. The power structures that once ruled the region will give way to more progressive, socially conscious forms of governance. South America's role in this new world order will be crucial, as nations leverage technology, renewable energy, and social reforms to carve out their place in an increasingly interconnected global landscape. The focus will shift from the concentration of power to collaboration, with South American countries contributing to global innovations in areas such as energy, climate solutions, and social equity. Conclusion: a time of transition and renewal. As November 2024 draws to a close, South America finds itself at a pivotal moment. The Uranus-Pluto trine and Neptune-Pluto sextile are driving forces of transformation, reshaping the continent's approach to finance, governance, and humanitarian reform. The Saturn-Mercury trine encourages disciplined diplomacy, while Mercury retrograde compels reflection on the effectiveness of communication, trade, and education systems. Meanwhile, Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn signify the end of an era, as the continent prepares for a future defined by innovation, progress, and collective leadership. This is a time of both challenge and opportunity. As South America navigates these powerful celestial influences, the decisions made during this period will shape its trajectory for years to come, pushing the region toward a future where sustainability, social justice, and technological progress take center stage. Mundane astrology forecast for the Caribbean islands and small island developing states, SIDS, November 2024. November 1, 2024, a tidal shift of power and sustainability. As the Sun and New Moon in Scorpio cast their intense, transformative gaze over the Caribbean islands and SIDS, a powerful wave of change begins to stir. Scorpio, known for its depth and intensity, dives into the region's core concerns, economic instability and the ever-looming threat of climate change. In this moment, the trine to Saturn and Pisces acts as a guiding force, urging island nations to solidify long-term sustainability strategies. With climate resilience at the forefront, the energy flows like the Caribbean tides, revealing both the hidden negotiations and the hard-won treaties shaping their futures. Imagine the quiet conference rooms of CARICOM, where diplomats, with the weight of their people's survival on their shoulders, push for bold reforms. There, whispers of resource equity intertwine with urgent calls for action, bringing institutions like the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, into the spotlight. This is no ordinary moment, it is a reckoning, a time to rethink, restructure, and reinforce economic stability. Beneath the surface, subtle movements toward global financial restructuring will shape these islands' futures, from Grenada to the Maldives, where the struggle for survival is as much economic as environmental. For the SIDS, Saturn's Piscean influence is a call to reimagine their role in the global economy, to push beyond reliance on aid toward a vision of self-sustained resilience. In the quiet before the storm, governments recalibrate their debts, and new partnerships form like constellations on the horizon, guiding their way through uncertain waters. November 3, 2024, the winds of expansion. As Mercury journeys into Sagittarius, a fresh wind of optimism sweeps through the Caribbean. Suddenly, the conversation shifts. Expansive discussions of diplomacy and legal reform fill the air, as nations look outward, eager to redefine their role in a rapidly changing world. Here, Sagittarian energy fuels bold, visionary dialogues, talks that span trade agreements and cultural exchanges, igniting hope for stronger integration into global frameworks. But Mercury in Sagittarius is not without its pitfalls. The allure of grand ideas and boundless optimism can overpromise. The region's leaders must navigate this excitement with caution, aware that not all that glitters will turn to gold. Yet, there is promise, especially in education. The region's intellectual landscapes, like the proud universities of Jamaica and Barbados, may witness a renaissance of reforms, with a focus on global connectivity. As they rise to the occasion, initiatives may surge, and international organizations such as the United Nations and the World Bank will step in, offering financial and technical support. The Caribbean Basin Initiative may find new life under this cosmic influence, while educational systems across the islands begin to resonate with global inclusivity trends. It's a time of cultural blossoming, where even the smallest island may stand tall, contributing its voice to the global chorus. November 5, 2024. Mars in Leo, a roaring call to action. As Mars strides into Leo, a surge of courage, creativity, and boldness sweeps across the Caribbean and SIDS, like a lion emerging from the jungle. This fiery alignment emboldens the region's leaders, setting the stage for more assertive stances in global negotiations. Picture the halls of CARICOM, where leaders, invigorated by Mars's fierce determination, debate ambitious economic policies, championing climate change initiatives with renewed fervor. It's a period when these nations, often dwarfed by larger powers, roar back, demanding to be heard on the world stage. In countries like Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, this energy manifests in dynamic displays of sovereignty. They might push against the economic inequities that have long held them back, challenging global structures that perpetuate their vulnerabilities. The air crackles with potential as governments dare to dream bigger and bolder, seeking to carve out their place in a turbulent global economy. However, with this drive comes the risk of power struggles, as ambitious leaders vie for influence within regional organizations like CARICOM, sparking competitive rivalries. Yet, amid this competition, there is also space for innovation. Visionary leaders may rise, championing solidarity and cooperation to tackle the region's greatest challenges: climate change, economic instability, and social reform. Mars in Leo doesn't just bring heat, it brings light, illuminating paths to a more resilient future. The stage is set for dramatic change, but only those with the strength and creativity to lead will claim the spotlight. November 12, 2024. Venus in Capricorn, the calm after the storm. As Mars's fiery influence begins to wane, Venus enters the pragmatic and disciplined sign of Capricorn, ushering in a period of calculated strategy and long-term planning. Gone is the rush of bold declarations. In its place comes the quiet determination to build something lasting. For the Caribbean islands and SIDS, Venus in Capricorn signals a shift toward structured economic reforms, particularly in areas like sustainable tourism, renewable energy, and infrastructure development. This is a time to lay down the foundations for future stability, with the careful hand of Capricorn guiding each move. In the negotiation rooms of the IMF and the World Bank, discussions of debt restructuring and financial aid take center stage. These talks are critical for nations like Haiti, still grappling with economic and political turbulence. Venus in Capricorn doesn't promise instant solutions, but it does offer a pathway to enduring economic resilience. Leaders will focus on creating policies that aren't just reactive but are designed to withstand future crises, a nod to the harsh lessons learned from past disasters. Countries that prioritize discipline and methodical governance during this transit will find themselves better positioned to weather the storms ahead. For instance, the drive to invest in renewable energy projects, an essential step for island nations threatened by rising sea levels, will gain traction, supported by international financial institutions. It's a time when careful planning meets global support, and the seeds of sustainable development are sown across the region. A quiet revolution in diplomacy and economics. As Venus in Capricorn gently reshapes the region's financial landscape, diplomatic relations shift as well. Strategic alliances are solidified, not through grand gestures, but through careful, behind-the-scenes work. The influence of organizations like AOSIS becomes even more critical, as they advocate for international support on environmental sustainability. This is not the flashy diplomacy of Leo's Mars. This is Capricorn's calculated, enduring vision for the future. Regional icons leading the charge. Throughout these transits, key organizations like CARICOM and AOSIS will play pivotal roles in shaping the political and economic dynamics of the Caribbean and SIDS. CARICOM's focus will remain on fostering regional cooperation, particularly in addressing climate change, a survival issue for these islands. Meanwhile, AOSIS's advocacy for climate resilience on the global stage will resonate even more as Venus in Capricorn encourages long-term sustainability projects. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank will also be essential actors, particularly in helping economically vulnerable nations navigate financial restructuring. Haiti, with its ongoing struggles, may find new opportunities to create more stable economic policies under Venus's practical influence. Additionally, UNESCO's initiatives, aligned with Mercury and Sagittarius, will continue to bolster educational reforms, ensuring that the region's youth are prepared to take on the challenges of a rapidly changing world. November 15, 2024, a day of reckoning for the Caribbean and SIDS. The astrological landscape of November 15, 2024, presents a dramatic crossroads for the Caribbean islands and small island developing states, SIDS. As Saturn stations direct in Pisces, a full moon rises in the steadfast sign of Taurus, and the tense Jupiter-Saturn square unfolds. The region is confronted with a delicate balancing act between growth, governance, and survival. This day marks the end of a long period of reflection and recalibration, forcing these nations to face the consequences of past decisions and the challenges ahead. The cosmic forces demand action, especially in the realms of healthcare, economic resilience, and resource management. Saturn direct in Pisces, rekindling humanitarian efforts. Saturn's direct station in Pisces feels like a collective exhale for the Caribbean and SIDS after months of reflection during Saturn's retrograde. This shift pushes humanitarian and healthcare reforms to the forefront, particularly in nations where vulnerabilities are laid bare by environmental and economic crises. The waters of Pisces, symbolizing both healing and empathy, flow into renewed initiatives aimed at fortifying healthcare systems across the region. Picture the hospitals of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, where healthcare workers, already overwhelmed by past hurricanes and economic turmoil, are finally given new resources to heal their communities. Global organizations like the WHO and PAHO will likely step up their support, coordinating efforts to bridge healthcare disparities and address the urgent demands brought on by climate-induced disasters. Social services could also see improvement, with new frameworks for disaster response and public health emerging under Saturn's influence. The people of the islands, long accustomed to weathering literal and figurative storms, may now begin to see the scaffolding of a more resilient future being built around them. Full moon in Taurus, a call for economic resilience. Under the illumination of the full moon in Taurus, the Caribbean's resource-based economies come into sharp focus. Taurus, the sign of earth and stability, compels these nations to confront their economic reliance on agriculture, tourism, and natural resources, which have been destabilized by global financial fluctuations. As the moon's light reveals the cracks in the current systems, the region is called to reassess how it manages its most precious resources. From the sugar cane fields of Jamaica to the coral reefs supporting tourism in the Maldives, this full moon asks, how can these resources be managed more sustainably? This lunation's energy pushes leaders to seek out new ways to protect their economies while safeguarding the natural assets that define their cultural and economic identity. Yet, with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini stirring confusion and miscommunication in financial matters, there is a heightened risk of miscalculations. Trade routes may become disrupted, markets may falter, and the ripple effects of global instability could reach the shores of these islands, leaving them grappling with how best to navigate uncertain waters. Jupiter-Saturn square, the tension of growth and responsibility. The tension between Jupiter's expansive drive and Saturn's conservative restraint manifests strongly in the Caribbean and SIDS under the weight of the Jupiter-Saturn square. On one side, there is the desire for growth, particularly in education, digital media, and law. Nations like Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago may feel the push to invest in expanding their educational systems or developing digital infrastructures. On the other hand, Saturn demands caution. With limited resources and fragile economies, leaders are forced to make hard choices about where and how to invest. Jamaica, with its rich cultural influence in global media, might feel the pressure to expand its digital presence. Still, it will have to weigh these ambitions against the stark realities of budget constraints and the need for careful governance. Similarly, Trinidad and Tobago may grapple with how to strengthen its educational reforms without compromising other critical sectors of its economy. The Jupiter-Saturn square asks these nations to balance their desire for advancement with a deep sense of responsibility toward their people and their future. At a broader level, institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank will loom large in these discussions, offering financial support, but not without strings attached. The region's leaders will need to demonstrate fiscal responsibility and long-term vision, rethinking policies that have left their economies vulnerable to external shocks. It's a time when growth must be tempered by a sober understanding of the practical limitations facing these islands, where every decision has long-lasting consequences. Mid-November 2024, Saturn-Uranus sextile, bridging tradition and innovation. The Saturn-Uranus sextile serves as a cosmic invitation for the Caribbean and SIDS to strategically blend the old with the new. Saturn, the wise elder of discipline and structure, shakes hands with Uranus, the rebel innovator, igniting productive reforms that promise to reshape the future of these vulnerable island nations. In the fields of agriculture, this aspect could spur a revolution. Imagine lush crops thriving under new sustainable practices, not bound by the limitations of traditional farming but nurtured by cutting-edge technology, ensuring food security even in the face of climate change. Countries like Barbados and the Bahamas might spearhead renewable energy projects, solar panels glistening in the Caribbean sun, wind turbines spinning along the coasts, reducing dependence on imported fossil fuels. This energy shift is not just about power, it's about resilience. With global attention on the effects of climate change, regional organizations like CARICOM and AOSIS, bolstered by the influence of Saturn and Uranus, will stand at the forefront of advocating for sustainable resource management. Their leadership in these discussions will serve as a beacon of hope for other developing nations facing similar existential threats. Jupiter-Uranus sextile, a surge of innovation and financial restructuring. As Jupiter, the planet of expansion and growth, harmonizes with Uranus, technological innovation reaches a fever pitch across the Caribbean and SIDS. This alignment, particularly influential in sectors like healthcare and energy, sparks the development of groundbreaking solutions for resource management. The seeds of scientific progress, previously sown, begin to bloom, with international collaborations catalyzing advancements that once seemed distant dreams. Picture Caribbean leaders in talks with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, discussing innovative funding models to support climate resilience projects, or negotiating with private sector tech giants to bring cutting-edge solutions to their shores. In healthcare, these breakthroughs could take the form of advanced telemedicine networks connecting remote islands, revolutionizing access to medical care. The region's ongoing battle with climate change-induced healthcare demands finds new allies in these technological innovations. As nations like Trinidad and Tobago or Jamaica balance the urgent need for economic expansion with the limitations of their economies, the Jupiter-Uranus sextile offers a guiding light, reminding them that progress is not only possible but necessary. But this cosmic energy doesn't come without its challenges. The delicate balance between expansion and sustainability must be maintained, or the region risks overextending itself. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and the Global Environment Facility, GEF, will play critical roles in guiding these nations, offering not only financial support but frameworks for growth that emphasize resilience over short-term gains. In this balancing act, the region's leaders will need to stay vigilant, lest they compromise the future for immediate success. November 17, 2024, Mercury trine Jupiter, a moment for diplomatic harmony. On November 17, the cosmos ushers in a breath of fresh air with Mercury trine Jupiter, creating a perfect moment for diplomatic breakthroughs and cultural exchange. The Caribbean, known for its vibrant culture and dynamic heritage, will find this aspect opening doors to global platforms where their voices can be heard and their stories told. As conversations flow, cross-border cooperation becomes a central theme, with leaders in the Caribbean and SIDS engaging in high-level discussions on trade, education, and media reforms. This is a moment of optimism, where the region's leaders might find themselves in productive negotiations with larger economies, pushing for more equitable trade agreements that reflect the unique needs of small island nations. In particular, regional organizations like CARICOM and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, may seize this opportunity to advance their diplomatic efforts, ensuring that the Caribbean remains an influential voice in global decision-making circles. Educational reforms, long overdue in many SIDS, may gain significant momentum during this period. With international support, possibly from UNESCO, new curricula that emphasize inclusivity and technological innovation could be implemented, preparing the next generation of islanders to engage fully with the global knowledge economy. These reforms are not just about catching up with the rest of the world. They are about positioning the Caribbean and SIDS as thought leaders in education and culture. In the realm of media, this trine invites a blossoming of cultural initiatives. The region's rich history, arts, and environmental beauty may find themselves highlighted on the world stage, attracting tourism and international investment. Caribbean heritage could become a global touchstone, with new media platforms showcasing everything from local traditions to ecotourism opportunities, offering a vital boost to regional economies. November 17, 2024, Saturn-Venus trine, a foundation of stability. The Saturn-Venus trine casts a stabilizing influence over the global financial and diplomatic landscape, particularly benefiting those nations with clear long-term strategies. For the Caribbean and SIDS, this aspect underscores the importance of foresight, planning, and patience, offering rewards to countries that have invested in sustainable economic frameworks. Picture Barbados, its shores shimmering under the weight of solar panels and wind turbines. Nations like this, which have bet on renewable energy and eco-friendly tourism, will see their efforts rewarded. With Saturn's discipline harmonizing with Venus's grace in diplomacy, these nations are likely to attract favorable trade agreements and long-term investments. International investors, drawn to the region's commitment to sustainability, may offer renewed funding, especially in sectors like green technology and infrastructure. This celestial alignment signals that groundwork pays off. The prudent economic policies adopted by these nations will gain momentum and support. The Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, emerges as a key player in this moment, advocating for climate resilience and fair economic practices on the global stage. Under this trine, AOSIS's negotiations around climate funding and resource management are poised to bear fruit, ensuring that SIDS are not sidelined in international discussions. The Saturn-Venus trine also highlights the role of global financial institutions such as the World Bank and IMF, which may introduce more sustainable solutions for debt relief and economic restructuring tailored to the unique needs of island nations grappling with the twin threats of economic volatility and environmental degradation. This is also a time for regional unity. CARICOM, working in tandem with AOSIS, may advance negotiations on climate disaster response funding, focusing on securing the future of the Caribbean against rising sea levels and destructive hurricanes. These organizations will lead with a steady hand, balancing immediate needs with long-term sustainability. November 18, 2024, Neptune-Sun trine, a wave of compassion. The Neptune-Sun trine ushers in a moment of spiritual leadership and humanitarian focus, elevating global conversations around compassion and collective well-being. This harmonious aspect enhances efforts to address the deep social and humanitarian issues that have long plagued the Caribbean and SIDS, such as poverty, healthcare inequality, and environmental injustice. In countries like Haiti, where the scars of natural disasters and economic disparity run deep, the Neptune-Sun trine brings hope. Humanitarian efforts, driven by a newfound sense of global compassion, could gain renewed vigor. International organizations like UNICEF and Oxfam may deepen their presence in the region, channeling resources to address the growing needs of vulnerable populations affected by climate change and economic instability. These efforts may not only provide relief but also foster long-term solutions, particularly in healthcare and social services. The idealism of Neptune, coupled with the vitality of the Sun, encourages Caribbean leaders to adopt a more compassionate approach to governance. Policies that prioritize social services, healthcare reform, and environmental protection could come to the forefront. Leaders may be inspired to integrate humanitarian ideals into their economic planning, ensuring that their citizens' well-being takes precedence in their decision-making processes. The Sun's bright light, filtered through Neptune's ethereal lens, shines on the most vulnerable, illuminating paths toward recovery and growth. In this moment, spiritual leadership might also take center stage. Communities across the Caribbean, many of which hold deep spiritual and cultural traditions, could find solace and guidance in this cosmic alignment. Governments might work closely with humanitarian organizations to protect the marginalized and those most affected by economic instability, fostering an ethos of collective care that strengthens both hearts and infrastructures. A dual trine of hope and strategy. As the Saturn-Venus trine provides a foundation for economic stability and diplomatic success, the Neptune-Sun trine enriches this progress with a sense of humanitarian responsibility. Together, these aspects offer a powerful narrative of hope for the Caribbean and SIDS, a time when strategic planning and compassion converge to bring about real change. Countries that have laid the groundwork for economic resilience will not only benefit from favorable investments but will also find themselves in a position to lead by example, showing how sustainable growth can be paired with care for the planet and its people. International partnerships formed under the auspices of these trines are likely to endure, rooted in a shared commitment to building a future where prosperity and compassion coexist. Key organizations: the Beacons of Change. CARICOM and OECS, Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. These regional powerhouses, supported by the Mercury-Jupiter trine, will strengthen diplomatic ties, advancing trade and cultural initiatives that benefit the region. AOSIS, Alliance of Small Island States. AOSIS's role in advocating for climate resilience and economic fairness will be underscored by the Saturn-Venus trine, ensuring that SIDS remain key players in global sustainability negotiations. World Bank and IMF. These institutions will offer critical support in long-term economic planning, providing sustainable financial frameworks for SIDS under the Saturn-Venus trine. UNICEF and Oxfam. As the Neptune-Sun trine brings humanitarian issues to the fore, these organizations will likely deepen their focus on poverty reduction, healthcare, and social services across the Caribbean and SIDS. November 22, 2024, Sun in Sagittarius and Moon in Leo, a cosmic stage for bold diplomacy and charismatic leadership. As the Sun steps into Sagittarius and the Moon finds its home in Leo on November 22, 2024, the Caribbean islands and small island developing states, SIDS, enter a period charged with diplomatic optimism, national pride, and charismatic leadership. This celestial alignment stirs both international ambition and emotional investment in governance, shaping political dynamics, economic shifts, and social movements in the region. Sun in Sagittarius, diplomatic expansion and legal reforms. With the Sun blazing into Sagittarius, the energy of diplomacy, legal reform, and educational growth rises to the forefront. Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, encourages expansive thinking, pushing Caribbean nations and SIDS to reach beyond their borders, forging new alliances and strengthening ties on the global stage. Organizations like CARICOM and AOSIS are likely to seize this moment, advocating for more favorable trade agreements, climate action commitments, and legal reforms that resonate with global sustainability goals. The region may see bold steps in international justice and human rights advocacy, particularly on issues close to home, environmental law, migration, and equitable resource distribution. Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, often regarded as diplomatic leaders in the Caribbean, could take center stage in promoting justice through global platforms. Their push for legal transparency and fair international frameworks reflects the Sagittarian ideal of seeking truth and justice, ensuring that smaller nations have a louder voice in global forums. Sagittarius also nurtures intellectual growth, and under its influence, educational reform could become a pivotal issue. Initiatives aimed at enhancing digital literacy, promoting cultural exchanges, and advancing technological education will find fertile ground. Caribbean nations, working in collaboration with international organizations like UNESCO, could spearhead programs that bridge the education gap, especially in vulnerable communities. The Sagittarian desire for exploration and learning might inspire reforms that not only expand access to higher education but also equip these nations with the skills necessary to thrive in a world increasingly affected by climate change and technological disruption. Moon in Leo, national pride and leadership scrutiny. While the Sun in Sagittarius encourages nations to look outward, the Moon in Leo draws their attention inward, amplifying national pride and the public's emotional connection to their leaders. Leo, the sign of the lion, roars with confidence, creativity, and charisma, but also demands accountability. Under this lunar influence, the people of the Caribbean and SIDS will expect their leaders to embody strength, vision, and courage, qualities essential in navigating the region's ongoing challenges. Citizens will become more invested in the actions and decisions of their governments, with leaders facing increased scrutiny. In countries like Cuba, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, where leadership has long been intertwined with national identity, this energy could lead to heightened political activity. Speeches that inspire, nationalistic events, and public displays of pride will strike deep emotional chords, either uniting the population under a common cause or exposing cracks in governance. This is a time when leaders who rise to the occasion with bold vision and clear, confident leadership will resonate powerfully with their people. However, those who falter or fail to meet the expectations of the Leo moon may face a growing wave of criticism. The moon's influence could also spark greater civic engagement, with the public demanding transparency and accountability, particularly in areas like corruption, public welfare, and social justice. Social movements calling for reforms may grow louder, as the people push for leadership that reflects their values and aspirations. A period of ambition and accountability. As the Sun in Sagittarius and the Moon in Leo guide the region through this transformative period, Caribbean nations and SIDS are likely to experience a dynamic interplay between diplomatic outreach and internal governance. The Sagittarian drive for expansion and intellectual growth will inspire new diplomatic efforts, trade agreements, and educational reforms, all aimed at securing a more prosperous and resilient future. Simultaneously, the Leo moon will sharpen the public's emotional connection to leadership, fostering national pride while demanding bold, transparent action from those in power. This combination of influences may lead to a surge in both regional cooperation and nationalistic movements, with leaders striving to balance their international ambitions with the needs of their people. The public's emotional investment will manifest in rallies, civic engagement, and social movements. With citizens demanding more than just survival, they will demand growth, fairness, and vision. The challenge for leaders across the Caribbean and SIDS will be to channel this energy into sustainable progress, forging a path that blends the adventurous spirit of Sagittarius with the heart-centered leadership of Leo. November 22–30, 2024. Leo rising at the Sun's ingress and Taurus midheaven, balancing sovereignty with financial stability. As the Sun transitions into Sagittarius on November 22, 2024, with Leo rising and Taurus reigning at the midheaven, the Caribbean islands and small island developing states, SIDS, find themselves at a pivotal crossroads. Leo's rising influence ignites a fierce sense of national pride and self-expression, encouraging these nations to assert their sovereignty and cultural identity on the world stage. This energy empowers leaders to stand tall, advocating for stronger representation in global governance, particularly around issues such as natural resource management and climate change adaptation. It's a moment for the region to roar, demanding that their unique needs and perspectives be heard in international forums. Countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, with rich histories of cultural influence, may use this period to spotlight their contributions to global culture, while simultaneously pushing back against trade practices or international policies that compromise their autonomy. In this climate, expect bold speeches from Caribbean leaders, calling for reforms in international trade that better serve the region's interests. The Leo influence energizes grassroots movements and encourages citizens to rally behind their leaders, fostering a wave of national pride and unity. At the same time, the Taurus midheaven grounds this fiery enthusiasm with a focus on economic stability and sustainable development. Taurus, the sign of the Earth, is concerned with long-term security, and its placement at the midheaven directs leaders to focus on practical matters, such as building resilient economies. This alignment signals a clear path toward bolstering financial stability through responsible resource management and sustainable tourism, industries crucial to the Caribbean and SIDS. Nations like Barbados, already ahead of the curve in embracing renewable energy and sustainable tourism, could further cement their role as regional leaders in these sectors. With the support of international organizations like the World Bank, IMF, and the Global Environment Facility, GEF, there's a push toward securing financial backing for climate adaptation projects and economic reforms. These efforts are designed to ensure that SIDS not only survive the mounting challenges of climate change but thrive economically in the long term. November 22, 2024, Saturn-Mercury trine, structured diplomacy and strategic agreements. The period from November 22 to November 25 is graced by the stabilizing influence of the Saturn-Mercury trine. This aspect fosters disciplined communication and strategic thinking, making it an ideal time for Caribbean nations and SIDS to negotiate agreements that bolster long-term resilience. The steady hand of Saturn in Pisces brings a practical approach to complex issues, particularly those involving environmental sustainability and economic policy. Caribbean leaders, guided by the constructive energy of this trine, will likely focus on solidifying policies that address climate change adaptation, disaster preparedness, and economic stability. Organizations like CARICOM and AOSIS, Alliance of Small Island States, will be at the forefront of these discussions, using this period to push forward crucial initiatives. These organizations may negotiate for international funding and technological support, laying the groundwork for regional projects aimed at climate resilience and sustainable development. Expect important diplomatic dialogues to take place, potentially resulting in partnerships with global institutions such as the World Bank and IMF, ensuring that financial support for climate action and disaster response remains a priority. The disciplined communication fostered by this trine also benefits ongoing trade negotiations. SIDS may work toward revising existing trade agreements or formalizing new ones that better align with their economic and environmental goals. The focus will be on creating frameworks that support the region's long-term economic viability while protecting its natural resources. November 25, 2024, Mercury retrograde, reflection and reassessment. As Mercury turns retrograde on November 25, the energy shifts from structured diplomacy to introspection and reassessment. Mercury retrograde traditionally signals a period of disruption in communication, travel, and technology. For the Caribbean and SIDS, this means that ongoing negotiations or agreements may face delays, especially those involving international trade and travel. Countries like the Bahamas and the Dominican Republic, heavily dependent on tourism, could experience setbacks due to travel restrictions or disruptions, further complicating their economic outlook. However, Mercury retrograde also offers an opportunity for reflection. This is a time to review the policies and agreements that have been established in previous months. Governments may find it beneficial to revisit trade agreements, education reforms, and regional policies, ensuring they are aligned with long-term national goals. In the educational sector, particularly in SIDS, the retrograde may prompt a deeper reassessment of how digital platforms and cross-border educational programs can be better integrated into national systems. Given the region's vulnerability to climate-related disruptions, This reflection period allows governments to refine policies that enhance digital literacy and create more resilient education systems. For nations still working to recover from the effects of natural disasters, this retrograde may act as a much-needed pause, allowing leaders to recalibrate their strategies, ensuring that the next steps taken are thoughtful and sustainable. The Mercury retrograde also opens space for regional leaders to reassess their communication strategies, refining their diplomatic approaches and preparing for the forward motion that will follow once Mercury goes direct. November 30, 2024. End of the month and long-term impacts. A time of deep transformation for the Caribbean and SIDS. As November draws to a close, the cosmic forces at play, most notably the Uranus-Pluto trine and Neptune-Pluto sextile, set the stage for long-term structural reforms that will resonate across the Caribbean islands and small island developing states, SIDS. These alignments push nations toward innovation and self-reliance, urging them to rethink and reshape their economic, agricultural, and governance frameworks in ways that align with the realities of climate change, economic volatility, and evolving global power structures. Uranus-Pluto trine, innovating finance and agriculture. The Uranus-Pluto trine brings transformative energy to areas long in need of reform, particularly finance and agriculture. For SIDS, this alignment signals the need to embrace innovative solutions that ensure economic sustainability and food security, especially in a region that remains highly vulnerable to climate-related disruptions. Nations like Haiti and the Dominican Republic may find themselves at the forefront of exploring new agricultural technologies, such as climate-smart farming techniques or regenerative agriculture. These innovations can enhance their resilience to natural disasters like hurricanes and droughts while simultaneously boosting local economies and reducing dependence on imported food. With Uranus retrograde in Taurus, this period also highlights the importance of financial stability, nudging these nations to diversify their economies, rethink fiscal strategies, and invest in areas that ensure long-term adaptability, such as renewable energy and sustainable tourism. Countries like Barbados and Jamaica, which have already made significant strides in developing sustainable economic models, are likely to capitalize on this energy, further solidifying their leadership roles in the region. They may become examples of how small island nations can effectively harness renewable resources and foster economic independence in the face of global challenges. Neptune-Pluto sextile, exposing institutional weaknesses and driving humanitarian efforts. Simultaneously, the Neptune-Pluto sextile highlights a period of reevaluation, particularly in governance and humanitarian efforts. As Neptune retrograde in Pisces reveals inefficiencies or deceptions within global and regional institutions, Caribbean nations may be compelled to reassess foreign aid policies, international partnerships, and governance structures that have failed to deliver on their promises of sustainability and resilience. For example, the reassessment of aid dependency could drive these nations to renegotiate the terms of foreign assistance, focusing on building internal capacities rather than remaining reliant on external actors. Humanitarian organizations like the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and Oxfam will likely increase their involvement, pushing for greater transparency and accountability in governance while supporting reforms that aim to protect the most vulnerable populations in these regions. This transit could also spark regional dialogues about social justice, environmental equity, and governance, exposing long-standing inequalities and prompting leaders to take more robust actions toward protecting their people and natural resources. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, reflecting on communication, diplomacy, and education. With Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, there is a strong emphasis on reassessing communication strategies, diplomacy, and educational systems. For SIDS, this is a critical time to refine their diplomatic approaches to ensure that their voices are amplified in global forums addressing issues like climate change, trade, and economic reform. Countries may revisit existing international agreements to ensure that they align with their long-term goals, particularly those involving education and technological integration. Educational reforms will also take center stage during this time, as nations focus on advancing digital literacy and cross-cultural collaboration, recognizing these as essential tools for future economic growth. The influence of Jupiter in Gemini encourages SIDS to adapt their educational frameworks to prepare their citizens for a rapidly evolving global workforce, particularly in sectors like technology, renewable energy, and sustainable development. UNESCO is expected to play a key role in supporting these initiatives, providing guidance on how to integrate digital learning platforms and international collaboration into national education policies. Uranus retrograde in Taurus. Flexibility and innovation in economic models. Uranus retrograde in Taurus continues to remind the Caribbean and SIDS of the necessity of economic flexibility and innovation. This period of reflection may prompt leaders to further diversify their economies, reducing reliance on traditional industries like tourism and agriculture, which are vulnerable to external shocks. Investments in sectors like renewable energy, sustainable tourism, and digital infrastructure will become increasingly important as these nations strive to build resilience in the face of ongoing global disruptions. Countries like Barbados and Jamaica, already recognized for their progressive approaches to sustainability, are poised to lead by example, guiding other nations in the region toward economic models that prioritize long-term stability over short-term gains. These nations will likely explore how technology can further enhance their financial and agricultural systems, perhaps by integrating blockchain technology for transparent trade or using artificial intelligence to optimize agricultural outputs. Pluto's final degrees in Capricorn, a turning point in global power structures. As Pluto moves through the final degrees of Capricorn, the world stands at the brink of significant shifts in power dynamics and economic systems. For the Caribbean and SIDS, this transition marks the culmination of a long-term restructuring of their place in the global economy. Pluto's impending entry into Aquarius in 2025 signals a new era of collective innovation and social progress, one in which small island nations may play a more autonomous and influential role. This shift will likely lead to increased advocacy for global equity, climate justice, and digital sovereignty. Organizations like the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, will take on greater significance in shaping international policies that reflect the unique needs of SIDS. Their voices, often marginalized in global governance discussions, may rise with new power as they push for reforms that ensure a fairer, more sustainable world order. Key organizations driving change, CARICOM, positioned to lead regional efforts in negotiating trade agreements, disaster preparedness policies, and economic sustainability measures, especially during the stabilizing Saturn-Mercury trine. AOSIS, Alliance of Small Island States, will continue to advocate for climate resilience and international support, focusing on the reassessment of international agreements during Mercury retrograde. IMF and World Bank, these institutions will provide crucial financial support and guidance as SIDS navigate new economic policies, ensuring long-term financial stability. UNDP and Oxfam, key players in addressing institutional weaknesses and supporting governance reforms, especially as Neptune retrograde exposes inefficiencies. UNESCO, expected to play a vital role in advancing digital education and cross-cultural collaboration, particularly during Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. Conclusion: preparing for the new era. As November 2024 concludes, the astrological influences push the Caribbean and SIDS toward long-term strategic thinking and transformational reforms. The Uranus-Pluto trine and Neptune-Pluto sextile call for innovative, sustainable solutions to economic, agricultural, and governance challenges. Political dynamics and social movements in the region will be shaped by a careful balance between structured negotiation and adaptability, ensuring that these nations are prepared for the opportunities and challenges of a new global order. As Pluto prepares to enter Aquarius in 2025, the groundwork laid in late 2024 will propel the Caribbean and SIDS toward a future marked by resilience, equity, and innovative leadership. These transits signal the dawn of a new era, one in which small island nations can not only survive but thrive on the global stage, reshaping their destiny and contributing meaningfully to the world's collective progress.